The courtroom was eerily silent. The buzz of hushed whispers from the spectators and the clinking of pens against notepads could barely be heard over the low murmur of tension that hung in the air. In the center of it all sat Elon Musk, the billionaire entrepreneur, CEO of Tesla and SpaceX, a man who had revolutionized industries and captured the world's imagination. But today, he wasn't here to talk about rockets or electric cars. Today, he was facing something that seemed almost as daunting, a legal battle that had turned into a public spectacle. His lawyer, a calm and composed figure, had just finished a detailed defense. Musk sat back, his fingers drumming lightly on the edge of the table as he observed the judge, a middle-aged woman with sharp eyes who had been leading this high-profile case with an air of indifference. The room could feel the tension. The back and forth between defense and prosecution had reached its peak, and now it was time for Musk to speak. Elon adjusted his suit, a gesture that seemed to indicate a calm exterior, but those who knew him well could sense the storm brewing underneath. He was used to being in control, used to dealing with billion-dollar decisions, but the stakes today were higher than anything he had ever faced. This case wasn't just about his companies. It was about his reputation, his future, and his legacy. The judge glanced at Musk over the rim of her glasses, an almost imperceptible smile forming on her lips. She'd already made her opinion clear. Musk was a novelty to her, a tech genius who had somehow managed to elude failure but was now in the crosshairs of the law. "Mr. Musk, your defense seems, well, rather optimistic," she said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. The courtroom let out a collective, uncomfortable chuckle. Musk's eyes narrowed. There was something about her tone, dismissive, mocking, that unsettled him. It wasn't just a legal proceeding for her. It felt personal, and that, in a way, was worse. He wasn't used to being underestimated. The judge continued, her tone light yet cutting. "I suppose you think flashing a few impressive numbers on your balance sheet is going to get you out of this one?" Another round of laughter rippled through the room. Musk had always been accustomed to the media and the public scrutiny, but hearing the judge herself join in, that was a line crossed. His mind raced. He could feel the pressure building, the weight of the moment, the frustration, and the sting of being belittled in front of everyone. But he also knew something the judge didn't. He had something that no one in that room expected him to pull out. Elon leaned forward, his movements deliberate. The courtroom fell into a hushed stillness, the tension palpable. He reached inside his jacket and pulled out a small, unassuming badge, one that gleamed under the courtroom lights. The audience blinked in confusion as they recognized it. A USSS badge. The United States Secret Service. The judge froze, her smile fading as she realized what had just happened. "Just in case you missed the memo," Musk said coolly, flashing the badge with a calm confidence that contrasted sharply with the silence that followed. "I don't just make decisions in Silicon Valley. I make decisions that affect this country and its security." The room went absolutely still. The air seemed to thicken as the reality of the moment sank in. Musk wasn't just some billionaire playboy. He was a man with connections, a man whose influence stretched far beyond the confines of his companies. And for the first time in a long while, the judge seemed to realize that maybe, just maybe, she had underestimated him. The thud of a gavel echoed in the courtroom, but it wasn't the judge who had struck it. Musk's lawyer, sensing the shift in the atmosphere, had taken control of the situation and called for a recess. The tension in the room broke, but not before whispers started circulating like wildfire. Outside the courtroom, reporters gathered in clusters, furiously typing out stories for the evening news. The story was already making headlines. Musk flashes USSS badge after judge laughs. The headlines would scream. But there was more to this than just a flashy moment of bravado. As the recess continued, Musk sat quietly in the corner of the room, his expression unreadable. He didn't need to gloat. The point had been made. The game had changed. The judge, who had once dismissed him, now had to take him seriously. The public, who had ridiculed him for his audacity, would now have to reconsider. But this wasn't about power. Not really. Elon Musk had built an empire, yes, but the legal battle he was waging had much more at stake than any of his companies. It was a fight for respect, for acknowledgement, and for something deeper. The principle that no one could undermine him or his vision. And yet, even as he stood in the quiet aftermath of his bold move, Elon Musk knew that this moment wasn't the end. It was just the beginning. The battle was far from over. And if the judge had thought his actions were surprising, she hadn't seen anything yet. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? Musk had often asked himself this question when facing setbacks in the past. Today, it wasn't just his vision for the future of humanity or his desire to change the world. Today, it was about proving a point that would echo through the halls of the courtroom and beyond. Musk didn't just fight for success. He fought for respect, and in this moment, he had just reminded everyone why it was a battle worth fighting. As the recess continued, Musk walked out into the hallway, his thoughts already racing ahead. He was prepared for whatever came next. This was just the first round, and Musk didn't lose. Not often, at least. The story was far from over. You won't believe what happens next. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? Elon Musk had been many things to many people. An inventor, a billionaire, a visionary, and, at times, a lightning rod for controversy. But in the quiet moments of his life, when the weight of public opinion and the pressure of his businesses lifted just enough, he wasn't any of those things. He was simply a man. Someone trying to make sense of the world, to find meaning in his own existence. As the day wore on and the courtroom recess stretched out, Elon found himself sitting alone in a small, nondescript office in the courthouse. The walls were bare, the furniture simple, but there was something oddly comforting about the space. It was a temporary refuge from the chaos outside. The hum of fluorescent lights overhead was the only sound in the room, a steady backdrop to Elon's thoughts as he sat at the desk, his fingers absently tapping the edge of a coffee cup. He had always been driven by one thing, a deep, almost unshakable desire to make the world a better place. From the moment he arrived in the United States from South Africa, the dream was clear in his mind: to revolutionize energy, to make humanity a multiplanetary species, and to change the way the world thought about technology. Tesla had started as a dream, an impossible dream to make electric cars desirable and viable. SpaceX, born from the same sense of purpose, sought to make life multiplanetary. The problems were immense, the hurdles unimaginable, but for Elon, they had always been just another challenge to overcome. He had been told countless times that his ideas were too radical, his goals too lofty. From his early days with Zip2 to his groundbreaking work with PayPal, people had dismissed him, laughed at his ambitions, and thought him out of touch with reality. But over the years, he'd proved them wrong. His companies had made strides in ways that no one, not even the fiercest critics, had predicted. And yet, here he was, back in a courtroom, not fighting for a revolutionary idea or innovation, but for his reputation, for his ability to continue changing the world without being torn down by the very system he had once sought to be a part of. His mind snapped back to the present as his lawyer entered the room, a man with a calm demeanor and an air of quiet confidence. He was well-groomed, well-spoken, and had been through many high-stakes cases before, but even he couldn't hide the fact that the courtroom battle was beginning to take a toll. "Are you okay, Elon?" the lawyer asked, his voice soft but concerned. Elon gave a small, almost imperceptible nod. "I'm fine. Just thinking." The lawyer raised an eyebrow. "About the judge?" Elon didn't answer right away. His fingers drummed on the coffee cup, a nervous tic he developed over the years. "She thinks I'm some sort of joke," he finally said, his voice a little quieter than usual. "That's not something I take lightly." The lawyer gave him a reassuring look. "You know that's just her tactic, right? She's trying to get a rise out of you. It's all part of the game. But that badge, whatever she thinks, changed the narrative today. You've got their attention now." Elon's eyes narrowed. "That's the point. I'm not here to play their game. I'm here to win." His lawyer nodded, understanding the stakes. "And you will. We'll be ready." As they stood up and walked out of the office, Elon couldn't help but feel a sense of foreboding wash over him. The game had only just begun, but the road ahead was filled with uncertainty. He had always prided himself on his ability to navigate through chaos, but this was something different. There was no blueprint for this kind of fight. In the coming days, the legal battle would intensify. The media would continue to question his every move. The judge would become more hostile, and the stakes would climb higher than ever before. But for Elon Musk, there was no turning back now. He had already stepped onto a path that would change everything, both for him and for those who would be watching closely. And whatever came next, he would face it head-on, just as he always had. The courtroom was starting to feel like a battleground, the tension thickening with each passing moment. Elon Musk could feel it. The sharp eyes of the judge, the whispering of the lawyers, and the cameras capturing every move he made. Today wasn't like the days of boardroom negotiations or product launches. Today was about something different, something much more personal. The judge's mocking tone still echoed in his ears. "Flashing a badge won't save you here, Mr. Musk," she had said. And yet, the small but powerful gesture had made its point. It wasn't about the badge itself, though the connection to the United States Secret Service, USSS, was important. It was about what it represented. A reminder that Musk's influence extended beyond the realm of business. Elon wasn't just a businessman. He was a man who had access to some of the most powerful circles in the world. He was a man who had seen the inner workings of the government, who had worked with agencies that were responsible for the nation's security. The USSS badge, which he had shown in the courtroom, was a symbol of that access, that influence. It wasn't just for show. It was a tool, and in the world Musk inhabited, tools were often the only way to cut through the noise and get results. But beneath the power, the wealth, and the connections, there was a person. A man who, despite his monumental successes, still felt the weight of the world on his shoulders. He wasn't immune to the doubts that plagued everyone. He wasn't invincible, despite how the media portrayed him. And he certainly wasn't immune to the feelings of isolation that had accompanied him through his life. Elon's mind wandered back to his childhood in Pretoria, South Africa. His early years had been difficult, marked by bullying, alienation, and a sense that he didn't quite fit in. He was always the odd one out, the kid with his nose buried in books about rockets, energy, and science fiction. While other children played soccer or chased after popularity, Elon dreamt of Mars. He dreamt of a world where technology could solve the biggest problems humanity faced. He dreamt of changing everything. But that wasn't something everyone understood. Growing up, Elon had few friends. His parents had separated when he was young, and while his father was a brilliant engineer, their relationship had been strained. It was his mother, May Musk, who had supported him through the tough years, encouraging him to chase his dreams even when the world seemed to doubt him. She had been the one to tell him that being different wasn't a curse, it was a gift. Still, Elon had felt alone for much of his life, and that loneliness hadn't dissipated as he got older. If anything, it had deepened. The more he achieved, the more people expected from him. He couldn't escape the pressure, the eyes that watched his every move, the voices that second-guessed his decisions. And now, in this courtroom, he was facing yet another challenge. One that, unlike any business deal or product launch, was deeply personal. The room fell silent, the weight of the accusation hanging in the air. Musk could feel the eyes of the audience on him, waiting for his response. The world had been watching him for years, every success, every failure, scrutinized. But today, this was different. The judge, the jury, and the spectators were looking at him through the lens of skepticism. They had already made their judgments about who he was and what he stood for. He had always known that this battle was about more than just defending himself. It was about reshaping the narrative, about showing the world who he really was, not the caricature the media had made him out to be. But the prosecutor wasn't done. "And, Mr. Musk," he continued, "don't you think that perhaps this badge you flashed earlier was a desperate attempt to intimidate this court? To distract from the real issues at hand?" Elon's expression remained calm, but inside, a quiet fury began to build. It was the same kind of fury he had felt when he had been rejected by venture capitalists in his early days, or when people laughed at him for trying to colonize Mars. He didn't care what others thought, not really. The point wasn't to prove them wrong. It was to prove to himself that he could do what others said was impossible. He leaned forward slightly, the flicker of intensity in his eyes barely noticeable. "I didn't flash that badge to intimidate anyone," he said, his voice steady. "I did it to remind everyone in this room that the problems I'm trying to solve are not just corporate or financial. They are problems that affect the very future of humanity. And sometimes, the challenges we face require more than just business acumen. They require a different kind of vision, a vision that looks beyond today and into the future." The prosecutor scoffed, clearly dismissing Musk's words as just another attempt at grandstanding. But there was something in his voice, something undeniable, that gave his statement weight. Musk wasn't just talking about business. He was talking about his life's work, the mission that drove him every single day. He wasn't just some billionaire with a lofty goal. He was a man who believed in the impossible and was willing to fight for it, no matter the cost. Outside the courtroom, the world was watching. News outlets had picked up the story immediately, their headlines only scratching the surface of the drama that was unfolding. They painted Musk as a man of arrogance, someone who used his influence to get what he wanted. But they didn't understand what was really at stake. The recess had only been the beginning, and now, as the second round of the hearing commenced, Musk sat once again at the defendant's table, feeling the weight of the eyes on him. The judge, whom he had so expertly thrown off balance with his USSS badge, now had her own defenses up. Her posture was rigid, her expression unreadable. The dismissive tone she had used earlier was gone, replaced with a cold professionalism. But Elon didn't need her approval. He didn't need anyone's approval. His focus was on something else, the bigger picture. This courtroom drama was just one chapter in a much larger story, one he had been living for years. As the proceedings continued, it became clear that the opposition wasn't going to back down easily. They had their own set of accusations lined up, ones that played into the public narrative of Elon Musk as an egotistical genius who cared more about his empire than the people around him. The press had fed the fire, spinning stories of his reckless behavior, his unpredictable decisions, and his apparent lack of concern for the consequences. But what the public didn't understand was that for Elon, there had always been a purpose behind his actions, even the ones that seemed reckless. Everything he did, every decision he made, came down to one thing: creating a future that was sustainable and innovative. Whether it was launching rockets or revolutionizing electric vehicles, his aim had always been the same. But it wasn't easy. The higher you climbed, the more people expected of you, and the more enemies you made. As the prosecutor began to outline his case, Musk's mind drifted for a moment to his early days at Tesla. It hadn't been easy back then either. The world had ridiculed the idea of electric cars. People laughed at his ambition. "They'll never catch on," they said. "No one will buy them." But Musk had ignored the critics, driven by the belief that the future of humanity depended on finding cleaner, more sustainable sources of energy. It wasn't about profit, it was about survival. The planet was heading toward disaster, and it was his mission to try and change that trajectory. But, as always, the journey was fraught with obstacles. There were plenty of nights when the future of Tesla hung by a thread. Investors were on edge. The press was unforgiving. And yet, here he was, sitting at the heart of yet another controversy, fighting for something just as vital: the preservation of his reputation and his ability to continue pushing forward. The prosecutor's voice snapped him back to the present. "Mr. Musk," he said, his tone dripping with disdain, "your actions have often seemed reckless and self-serving. Your disregard for the safety of your employees, for the stability of your companies, and for the law itself, well, it speaks volumes. And it's a pattern, wouldn't you agree?" As the trial wore on, the courtroom drama took a more sinister turn. Musk's opponents began to bring up aspects of his past, his public feuds, his controversial tweets, and his unorthodox business decisions. They painted him as unpredictable, a man who couldn't be trusted with anything, let alone the future of humanity. But for Elon, this was nothing new. The critics had always been there, always ready to tear him down. But he had learned not to care about their opinions. Instead, he focused on what mattered: the future, space, energy, humanity. That was his real mission, and nothing was going to derail it. As the gavel struck to adjourn the court for the day, Elon Musk stood up slowly, his mind racing with the weight of the challenges ahead. This was just the beginning of a fight that would push him to his limits, a fight that would test everything he believed in. But one thing was certain, Elon Musk was not about to back down. He had come too far, and there was too much at stake. The world could watch all they wanted, but the outcome of this trial wasn't going to define him. His vision would. And it was only just getting started. The night after the courtroom session, the media frenzy was in full swing. It was no longer just a court case. It had evolved into something far bigger. The headlines were impossible to ignore, and no matter how many times Elon refreshed his phone, the news only seemed to multiply. Musk had done something that most would consider unthinkable. He had thrown down a challenge to the establishment using an unexpected tool, his connections. But what did it really mean? Was he trying to intimidate the court? Was he trying to assert his dominance over a legal system that was supposed to be impartial? The stories ran wild, questioning his motives and analyzing every word he had spoken in the courtroom. Some said he had finally cracked under the pressure of years of public scrutiny. Others painted him as a man who would stop at nothing to win, even if it meant using his power to force others to bend to his will. But for Elon, it wasn't about power. It was about setting the record straight. He knew the media had their own narrative to follow, and they would spin things however they wanted. That wasn't his concern. His focus had always been on the long term. And the long term, in his mind, was always about pushing humanity forward. By the time the following morning rolled around, the pressure had become unbearable. The glare of the spotlight was like a heavy weight, pressing down on him with each step he took. The reporters, eager for the next headline, had camped out in front of the courthouse, their cameras ready for anything that would make waves. But Elon had dealt with pressure before. This wasn't the first time the world had turned its gaze on him, and it wouldn't be the last. The truth was, he had been living in the spotlight for so long that it had become a part of his reality. He had gotten used to it. The flashing lights, the constant questioning, the judgments from people who didn't understand his vision. But today felt different. There was an edge to the scrutiny now, something sharper than before. The courtroom had only been a small piece of the puzzle. What really mattered was what happened next. How would he handle the fallout? Would he let the world's judgment affect him, or would he continue to push ahead, no matter the cost? As he arrived at his car, surrounded by a wall of reporters trying to get a glimpse of him or a soundbite from his lawyer, Elon kept his expression neutral. His thoughts were focused elsewhere, not on the media circus, not on the barrage of questions, but on something far more important, the next step in his plan. Inside the car, Elon leaned back in his seat, his eyes closed for a moment, allowing himself a brief respite from the chaos. The sound of the reporters' voices faded into the background as he ran through his options. He could give a statement, but would it really change anything? Or would it only give more fuel to the fire? He thought about the long-term consequences of his actions, the implications for Tesla and SpaceX. The media would continue to cover the story, and in time, the dust would settle. He had weathered storms before, public criticism, failed rockets, business flops. But this felt different. This time, the fight wasn't just about the companies or about money. This time, it was about something deeper. His reputation, his credibility, and his ability to continue doing what he loved. Musk knew he had made a calculated risk by pulling out the USSS badge, but it had been a necessary move. The courtroom had needed a reminder that he wasn't just another businessman. He was someone with real influence, someone who had proven time and again that his vision extended beyond the confines of the corporate world. The badge was symbolic, a way of saying, I'm not just a CEO. I'm a man who operates on a scale that most can't even fathom. But that move came with its own set of risks. By showing the world his connections, Musk had opened himself up to even more scrutiny. People would question his motives, assuming he was using his ties to the government to manipulate the system. The media would twist the narrative, turning his display of power into something darker, something sinister. They always did. But Musk wasn't interested in playing by their rules. In fact, he had learned long ago that the media's narrative wasn't something he could control. The only thing he could control was his next move. And whatever happened next, he would be ready. Hours later, back in his office at Tesla's headquarters, Musk sat at his desk, staring at a monitor filled with reports about the case, the media coverage, and the latest social media reactions. He had always known the price of fame, how the constant attention could be both a blessing and a curse. But now, with his reputation hanging in the balance, it felt like the price was higher than ever. The phone on his desk buzzed, and Elon glanced down at it. It was a message from Gwynne Shotwell, SpaceX's president and his trusted right hand. Elon, I just saw the news. Is this really the direction you want to take with the USSS badge? The optics could be bad. He stared at the message for a few seconds before typing a response. It's not about optics, Gwynne. It's about sending a message. People need to understand that I'm not just playing games. I'm here to change things, and I won't back down from that. He hit send, his mind already racing ahead to the next challenge. The media storm was just a temporary distraction. What mattered was the long game, the future of SpaceX, Tesla, and everything he had built. As the day continued, more messages from concerned colleagues and advisors poured in. The questions were always the same. Is this really the right move? What about the legal consequences? What's the long-term strategy? Elon couldn't answer them all. Not in the way they wanted. He didn't play by the typical rules of business. He was the kind of person who took risks, who gambled on the impossible. He had always been willing to take the hard road if it meant achieving something that truly mattered. Later that evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Elon Musk took a moment to reflect on everything that had led him here. The successes, the failures, the controversies, they had all brought him to this point. But the one thing that had kept him going through it all was his unrelenting belief in the future. He wasn't trying to win a popularity contest. He was trying to change the world. The next morning, the headlines were still dominated by his courtroom showdown. But he wasn't afraid. He was ready. And whatever the media said, the next phase of the battle had only just begun. Elon Musk wasn't unfamiliar with the weight of power. For years, he had navigated the world of billion-dollar companies and international media coverage, making decisions that would affect millions. But the kind of power he was feeling now was different. It was a power he could not control, the kind that seeped into every corner of his life, from his personal relationships to his business dealings. It was a power that demanded sacrifice. The courtroom drama had already started to take on a life of its own. The USSS badge incident had sparked heated debates on news channels, and everyone seemed to have an opinion about Elon Musk's intentions. He had quickly realized that the media could spin the story any way they pleased, but one thing was undeniable. They were watching him closely. It wasn't just the media that was waiting for his next move. His colleagues at Tesla and SpaceX were under pressure as well. They knew that the world was scrutinizing every action, every decision Elon made. And as the stakes got higher, the whispers in the hallways grew louder. Would this scandal hurt their companies? Would they be able to continue pushing forward with the same momentum as before? Elon had always known that taking risks was part of the job, but this was different. This wasn't just about building the future of space exploration or sustainable energy. This was about defending himself, his very identity, as someone who had the right to make bold moves in the name of progress. But even in the midst of the media storm, Musk knew that he couldn't afford to back down. There was too much at stake, not just for him, but for the world. The future of electric vehicles, space travel, and artificial intelligence hung in the balance. And no matter how much the press tried to paint him as reckless or arrogant, Elon knew that he had to push forward. It was early the next morning when the call came. Gwynne Shotwell, his trusted partner in SpaceX, was on the line. "Elon," she said, her voice steady but tinged with concern, "I need to talk to you about something serious." Elon sat up in bed, his mind immediately sharpening. Gwynne didn't usually call him at this hour unless it was urgent. "What's going on?" he asked, rubbing his eyes. "It's about the legal team. We're getting some pushback from investors. Some of them are worried about the way this trial is affecting our image. And you know how the media is spinning this. They're already framing it as a spectacle." Elon leaned back, his fingers resting on the edge of the nightstand. "We can't control the media. We can only control what we do. And right now, I'm not backing down." "I know," Gwynne replied. "But there's more at stake here than just us. If this case goes south, it could harm the public perception of our companies. You know how sensitive these things are. The investors might start pulling back if they think this is going to become a long-term distraction." Elon closed his eyes for a moment, taking in the gravity of her words. He understood the concern. Investors were the lifeblood of his companies, and if they lost confidence in him, everything could come crashing down. But he also knew that he couldn't let fear dictate his actions. "We'll handle it," he said finally, his voice resolute. "SpaceX and Tesla are bigger than any scandal. We're building something that the world needs. They'll see that." "I hope so," Gwen replied. "But we need to act quickly. The longer this drags on, the more ammunition they'll have. You need to be prepared for the fallout." Elon sat in silence for a few seconds, reflecting on the pressure that had suddenly mounted. The more successful he became, the more people expected him to keep it all together, to stay calm, collected, and in control. But Elon was human. And no matter how much power or influence he wielded, he couldn't escape the consequences of his actions. "I'll meet with the team in the morning," he said, trying to push the weight of the conversation aside. "We'll work out a plan. Let's focus on the future, Gwen. That's the only thing that matters." The meeting went on for hours as they mapped out the next steps, but for Elon, it was clear. The price of power was steep, but he had paid it before. And if that meant facing the full force of the media storm, so be it. He wasn't going to let anyone, or anything, distract him from his mission. As he left the room, a sense of calm washed over him. The road ahead would be difficult, but he was ready. And whatever the media or his enemies might throw at him, he knew one thing for sure. He would never stop fighting for the future. The next few days were a blur for Elon Musk. Every hour brought a new headline, a new analysis, a new accusation. The media had spun the courtroom moment with the USSS badge into something bigger than it had ever been intended to be. The way they portrayed it, almost like a declaration of war, made him wonder if he had underestimated the consequences. Had he made a mistake? Could he have communicated his point differently? The doubts were there, but they weren't overwhelming. In fact, they were more like quiet whispers beneath the roar of the storm he was now part of. Elon sat in his office, the blinds closed, his eyes fixed on the monitors displaying a constant stream of news updates. It felt like the whole world was watching, analyzing, and making judgments on a decision he had thought was just a simple, albeit bold, assertion of his position. But now, it was clear. The media had made it the defining moment of the case. The badge had become the symbol of his defiance. A defiance not just of the court, but of anyone who questioned his methods or his ambitions. His phone buzzed again, breaking his focus. It was from his lawyer, Jonathan Harris. "Elon, we need to talk. The press is starting to affect the trial. We're getting negative press, and some of the jurors are even hearing about it. I think we need to reconsider your strategy, at least for now." Elon hesitated for a moment, weighing the options. Jonathan's words weren't without merit. The last thing he wanted was for the case to spiral into something it didn't need to be. But at the same time, Elon was never one to back down. He wasn't about to apologize for making his point, and he certainly wasn't about to let the press dictate how he ran his life, or his companies. As the call ended, Elon felt a brief moment of clarity. He had made his decision. There would be no turning back now. The public would never understand him, never truly see the bigger picture. They would always be too caught up in the drama, the headlines, the spectacle. But that wasn't why he did it. He wasn't trying to win popularity contests or charm the media. He was building something that could change the world. And that was all that mattered. By the time the day's meetings began, Elon was already in full motion. He had a new fire in his belly, a sense of urgency that pushed him to move faster and more decisively than ever before. This was a defining moment, not just for his career, but for the future he had spent his life working toward. If he let this trial define him, then everything he had worked for could unravel. Gwen had been right about one thing. The optics were critical. The media might be framing him as a man who had lost control, but he wasn't about to give them that narrative. It was time to regain control, to shift the conversation back to what really mattered: his companies, his vision, and the world-changing technologies that would be developed under his leadership. At Tesla's headquarters, the team was already gathered, ready to discuss how to handle the fallout. The press conferences, the investor meetings, the social media strategy, all of it needed to be addressed. The last thing they wanted was for the case to affect their operations. The world was watching, and they couldn't afford to falter now. Elon walked into the room with a sense of purpose, his mind already made up. The team stood as he entered, and he could feel the nervous energy in the air. It was palpable. But instead of letting the pressure overwhelm him, Elon focused on the task at hand. He needed to reassure his team, to show them that he still had the vision, the leadership, and the drive to lead them forward. "We're not backing down," he said, his voice firm. "This trial doesn't define us. What we do next will. We've got too much on the line to let this distraction derail us." He saw the relief in their eyes. They had been waiting for him to take charge, to show them that despite the noise and the chaos, there was still a clear path forward. Elon had always been the one to take the tough road, to lead by example. And that wasn't going to change now. They would continue to innovate, to push the boundaries of what was possible. And in time, the world would see that the real story wasn't about a courtroom drama or a flashy badge. It was about the future they were building together, one that no scandal could stop. He typed a quick reply. "Jonathan, the point has been made. This isn't just about the courtroom. It's about the bigger picture, the future of everything we're building. We'll handle the optics. Let's focus on winning the case." He pressed send, his fingers tapping lightly against the desk. There was no turning back now. Elon knew that if he wanted to keep moving forward, he had to push through the noise, no matter how loud it became. Later that evening, as the sun set and the city lights flickered on, Elon found himself sitting alone in his office, reflecting on his next move. The space around him was filled with the hum of Tesla and SpaceX operations, teams working tirelessly to push the envelope of innovation. But even with all the forward momentum in the world, he couldn't shake the feeling that the pressure was starting to build. The USSS badge incident had caused an uproar, but it was also starting to build a cult following. Some saw him as a hero, someone willing to stand up against a system they felt had long been broken. Others saw him as a symbol of arrogance, someone who believed he was above the law. The divide was sharp, and the debate was only getting more intense. Elon had always been someone who preferred to work in the background, building the future without needing constant validation. But this case, this badge, had thrust him into the spotlight in a way he hadn't anticipated. And as much as he wanted to dismiss the noise, there was still a nagging feeling that something had shifted. He leaned back in his chair and looked out the window, his mind wandering back to his early days at Tesla and SpaceX. He thought about the countless hours spent in garages and cramped offices, trying to convince people that the future could be different, that electric cars weren't just a novelty, that space travel wasn't a distant dream. Those were the days when the only thing that mattered was the mission to change the world. But now, the mission seemed to be tangled in the politics of media, public perception, and legal battles. The weight of the badge that had once symbolized strength now seemed to symbolize something else entirely, something more dangerous, something more vulnerable. The next day, he found himself in a meeting with his closest advisors. They gathered around the long conference table at Tesla headquarters, all eyes on him as they discussed the fallout from the media storm. His legal team, his communications team, and key engineers were all present. They needed a strategy. "We need to get ahead of this," said Jonathan, his lawyer, adjusting his glasses as he spoke. "If we keep letting the media control the narrative, we're going to lose the public. We have to either make a public statement or risk letting the story spiral out of control." Elon didn't immediately respond. He was lost in thought, running through the possibilities. A public statement might appease the media for a moment, but would it really change anything? Would it make them stop questioning his motives? Or would it just provide more fodder for the next round of headlines? "Public relations isn't just about appeasing the press," he finally said, his voice measured. "It's about control. We've built something massive with Tesla and SpaceX. We're changing industries. And this trial, and whatever happened in that courtroom, is just a small part of the bigger picture. We can't let a single incident define us." There was a long pause in the room as everyone absorbed his words. Gwynne Shotwell, SpaceX's president, who had always been a voice of reason in these situations, leaned forward. "You're right," she said. "But the optics matter. Investors are getting nervous. Some of them are questioning whether the bad press is going to impact our stock prices. And we're already seeing a drop in investor confidence." Elon didn't flinch. We'll weather it. We've weathered worse. The companies are strong, and the products speak for themselves. If we give in to the media, we're admitting that we can't take the heat. We've got to keep our eyes on the mission." Gwen nodded, though the concern was still there in her eyes. "I agree, but it's not just about the media. We've got to figure out a way to calm the storm, to give people confidence again. You need to be seen as the person who's in control, the one who can steer us through this." Elon thought for a moment, then leaned forward, looking at each person around the table. "All right, here's what we do. We continue with the legal strategy, but we also double down on innovation. We've got to remind the world why we're here. I'll be the face of the companies, but not in the way they expect. Let the media have their stories. We'll have the future." The team nodded, some with visible relief. The plan wasn't perfect, but it was something. Elon knew that as long as he stayed true to the mission and focused on the bigger picture, he could ride out the storm. That evening, as Elon sat at his desk, staring at the photos of SpaceX rockets on the wall and Tesla's latest vehicle designs on his screens, he knew one thing for sure. He wasn't going to let the badge be the end of his story. In fact, he was already planning the next phase. The badge wasn't just a symbol of defiance anymore. It was a reminder of the power he held. And with that power, he was going to change everything. Not just for Tesla, not just for SpaceX, but for the world. And if the price of power was a media storm, then so be it. He had never shied away from a challenge. The real challenge lay in what he was building, and that was something no scandal could derail. The storm wasn't over. In fact, Elon Musk was beginning to realize that it had only just begun. As the legal battle continued and the media buzzed like a hive of angry bees, he couldn't help but feel like there was an invisible enemy lurking in the shadows, a force far more insidious than any headline. This enemy wasn't interested in sensationalism or clicks. It was the slow, steady erosion of trust. Trust in his leadership, trust in his vision, trust in his companies. The invisible enemy wasn't just the media. It was the undercurrent of doubt, seeded by the very trial he was embroiled in. While the public may have been quick to form opinions, the real damage was happening behind closed doors. Investors were whispering, partners were hesitating, and even some of his most loyal employees, the ones who had stood by him through thick and thin, were starting to question if all of this constant barrage of challenges, was worth it. It was late on a Thursday evening when Elon got the call from his head of finance, Eric Schneider. Elon had been staring at a complex set of projections on his screen for the last 2 hours, trying to push through the exhaustion and get ahead of a new deadline for SpaceX's Mars mission. But the numbers weren't adding up, and his thoughts kept drifting back to the trial. "Some of our major backers are starting to pull back their funding." Elon stood up and walked toward the window of his office, looking out over the sprawling Tesla factory below, the lights of the assembly lines flickering like distant stars. This was his domain, the space where he had built an empire. But now, that empire was under siege. "How bad is it?" Elon asked, his voice even, though inside, his mind was racing. "It's not just the investors. It's the market as a whole. Tesla's stock is dropping, and SpaceX isn't immune. We can't afford another round of bad press. If this trial drags on, it could cost us everything. Elon, we need to address this now, before it's too late." Elon could hear the weight of the situation in Eric's voice. He was always the calm one, the pragmatist. If he was this worried, it meant the problem was deeper than just a few bad headlines. "All right, Eric," Elon replied. "I'll be in touch with the team tomorrow. We'll get a plan together." As he hung up, Elon stood still for a moment, letting the gravity of the situation settle over him. For a moment, he wondered if this was the beginning of the end. He'd built so much, and yet, it felt like it could all unravel in a matter of weeks. The weight of the badge, the courtroom drama, and the whispers from his own investors felt like a constant pressure on his chest. But Elon had never been one to back down. He'd faced worse challenges in his career, obstacles that had seemed insurmountable, and yet, time and time again, he'd found a way to rise above. The next morning, he gathered his core team in a secure conference room at Tesla's headquarters. The energy in the room was palpable, a mixture of anxiety and determination. Gwen Shotwell, Jonathan Harris, and Eric Schneider were all there. along with his head of communications, Lisa Hall, and several other key members from Tesla and SpaceX. They all knew the stakes were higher than ever before. Elon, Gwynn started. We need to make a decision, and we need to make it now. The investors are beginning to lose faith, and the press won't stop pushing this badge incident. We've had calls from major shareholders wanting to know if we're in control of this situation. We need a clear path forward. Elon sat down at the head of the table, his mind sharp despite the lack of sleep. He could see the concern in their eyes. Everyone in the room was invested in this, not just financially, but emotionally. They had followed him for years, believed in his vision when others didn't. They knew that without his leadership, Tesla and SpaceX might never have achieved the success they had. I've been thinking about this, Elon said, his voice steady. The story they want to tell is one of chaos and uncertainty. They want to paint me as someone who's lost control. But that's not the reality. The reality is we're doing things that no one thought possible, building rockets that can land themselves, changing the entire automotive industry. The real story is the future we're building, and we can't let this trial, this badge, distract us. Gwynn nodded slowly, but there was still hesitation in the room. But Elon, the damage is happening. We're not just fighting the press. We're fighting a narrative that's being built around your actions. The badge, it's become a symbol, and right now, that symbol isn't working in our favor. I get it, Elon replied, standing up and pacing the room. The press is feeding off this, but they don't define us. We define us. We don't need to explain ourselves to the media. We need to double down on what we do best. Innovating. Pushing the boundaries of what's possible. Eric cleared his throat. But how do we do that, Elon? How do we make sure that we're not losing the faith of the people who are funding these innovations? Elon paused and turned to face his team. He took a deep breath and finally said, "We make them believe in the future. I'll take a step back from the headlines. I'll focus on the mission. I won't let this case define me. Let's focus on the product. Let's launch something so groundbreaking, so monumental, that the press will have no choice but to follow the story. If we can make them see that we're moving forward, despite everything, they'll have no choice but to rally behind us." Gwynn looked at him, her eyes narrowing as if processing the shift. "Are you suggesting we launch something major while the trial is still ongoing?" Elon nodded. "Exactly. Something that shows the world that we're not slowing down. A new mission. A new goal. SpaceX's Mars mission can't wait. Tesla's next-generation battery technology? It can't wait either. We can turn this whole thing around by demonstrating that the future is still in our hands." It was a bold move, and everyone in the room understood the risks. But it was also a move that played to Elon's greatest strength, his ability to focus on the bigger picture, even when everything around him seemed to be falling apart. "I'll talk to the teams," Gwynn said. "If we can make this happen, it will not only shift the conversation, it will remind everyone why they're investing in us in the first place." The next few days were a whirlwind of meetings, phone calls, and strategy sessions. Elon pushed forward with his plan, even as the trial continued to loom overhead. He refused to let the badge incident overshadow the future. SpaceX's Mars mission was moving forward, and Tesla's new battery technology would be unveiled sooner than expected. The media might have been focused on the courtroom drama, but Elon Musk knew that the real story, the one that mattered, was the one that was still unfolding. And no matter what the world thought of him, he was going to make sure that the future stayed in focus. The weeks that followed Elon Musk's bold plan to push through with his innovations were marked by relentless preparation. While the media still fixated on his courtroom antics, the Tesla and SpaceX teams were operating in overdrive. The pressure was intense. Elon's challenge wasn't just proving the world wrong. It was ensuring that his companies could maintain their momentum while keeping their eyes on the bigger goal. There was no room for distraction. Every small decision was now weighed against the urgency of the ongoing trial. Every move Elon made needed to be calculated to show the world that the vision for the future wasn't fading. It was only growing stronger. The pivotal moment came one Friday afternoon, in the middle of a routine check-in meeting at Tesla's Gigafactory. Elon had been speaking with his engineers about the new battery technology Tesla was developing, something so advanced it could potentially revolutionize the electric vehicle, EV, market and shift the global energy conversation entirely. "All right, everyone, listen up," Elon said, standing at the head of a large table surrounded by his top engineers. We're on the cusp of something massive here. This isn't just about improving our battery life. It's about fundamentally changing the way the world consumes energy. This technology is going to make Tesla the global leader not just in cars, but in energy. This is our moment to prove the world wrong, and I'm not going to let that moment slip away. His words were charged with an intensity that rang through the room. His team had always respected him, but in that moment, something different sparked in their eyes. They weren't just working on a project, they were working on a mission. Elon wasn't asking them to make a better battery. He was asking them to change the world. I know the media's been relentless, Elon continued, but this is bigger than that. This is about creating something that lasts, something that no headline can tarnish. We're going to release the new battery tech in the coming weeks, but we're not just going to announce it quietly. We're going to do it in a way that forces the world to pay attention. The team nodded in agreement. They had felt the growing pressure, but they trusted Elon's leadership. They'd seen him face down adversity before and come out on top. The trust was unwavering. The next day, Elon met with Gwynne Shotwell and Jonathan Harris to refine the strategy. Gwynne, Elon began, we're moving forward with the battery launch. We're going to tie it into SpaceX's upcoming Mars announcement. Let's make it a two-pronged event. A revolution in energy and a revolution in space. Gwynne raised an eyebrow. Are you sure about this? The media is still coming after you. This kind of move could escalate everything. It could make things more chaotic. He gestured to the sleek, futuristic vehicle on the stage beside him. The new battery technology we've developed here at Tesla isn't just about electric cars anymore. It's about powering everything. It's a breakthrough that will change the way the world thinks about energy consumption, and it will make clean, sustainable energy available to anyone, anywhere. The crowd murmured, their attention peaked. But that was only the beginning. And while we're pushing the boundaries of energy, Elon continued, SpaceX is taking a bold step toward making life multiplanetary. We're moving forward with plans to send the first crewed mission to Mars within the next 2 years. A collective gasp rippled through the crowd. People hadn't expected this. In the midst of the ongoing trial, no one had expected Elon to deliver such a monumental announcement. The world needs to see that no matter the challenge, no matter the storm, the future isn't waiting. The future is here. The media response was immediate. The headlines were dominated by Elon's new announcement. People couldn't help but marvel at the audacity of it all. The man who had been embroiled in a high-profile legal case now presenting the world with not one, but 2 groundbreaking innovations that had the potential to change the future. The USSS badge incident still lingered in the background, but it no longer felt like the defining moment. Now, the world was talking about the battery technology that could change the global energy infrastructure and the Mars mission that might just make humanity a multiplanetary species. In that moment, Elon Musk wasn't just a business leader or an entrepreneur. He had become something more, a symbol of resilience, a man who could defy the odds and keep pushing forward, no matter the weight of the world on his shoulders. The media may have laughed at him, but now they were watching with awe. They didn't know what was coming next, but they knew it was going to be bigger than anything they could have imagined. Elon Musk had always been able to anticipate the consequences of his actions, but even he couldn't fully prepare for the ripple effect that followed his joint announcement about the new Tesla battery technology and SpaceX's Mars mission. The immediate impact was nothing short of extraordinary. Within hours of the announcement, the stock prices for both Tesla and SpaceX spiked dramatically. Investors, who had been on the fence for weeks, began pouring money back into the companies. The financial markets, once jittery from the uncertainty surrounding the trial, were suddenly brimming with optimism. The press, instead of digging deeper into the courtroom drama, now found themselves scrambling to catch up with the broader implications of Elon's words. The public reaction was equally intense. Headlines that once ridiculed him for the USSS badge incident were now touting his ability to not only survive but thrive under pressure. Social media buzzed with discussions about his vision for the future, with some even calling him a modern-day hero or the savior of humanity. Despite the storm of negative press he'd endured, Elon was now in control of the narrative. Yet, as the dust settled, a new challenge began to emerge. a different kind of pressure. Elon had once been able to rely on his single-minded focus to guide him through tough times. But this time, things were different. The stakes were higher. The world was watching closely, and he couldn't afford to stumble. The first sign of trouble came just a few days after the announcement. Elon was in a meeting with Gwynne Shotwell and Jonathan Harris when he received a call from his lead engineer at SpaceX, George Mitchell. "Elon," George's voice came through, slightly shaky, "we've got a problem with one of the Mars mission prototypes. There's a structural issue with the heat shield. It's not holding up the way we expected." Elon's immediate reaction was one of frustration. He had just given the speech of his life, and now there was a technical flaw that could potentially derail everything. But instead of letting anger take hold, he took a deep breath. "Let's not panic," Elon said, his voice calm. "How bad is it? We need to make repairs. It's not catastrophic, but it's going to take time." "Time we don't have," George replied. Elon's mind raced. The timeline for the Mars mission was already tight, and delays were not an option. If they couldn't resolve this quickly, it would not only jeopardize the mission, but also the momentum they had worked so hard to build. The media would certainly seize on the issue, and the investors who had just begun to regain confidence would begin to question everything. "I'll be there in an hour," Elon said, hanging up the phone. "Let's figure out a solution." The next hour felt like a blur as Elon made his way to the SpaceX facility. His mind wasn't focused on the technical details of the heat shield failure. It was on the bigger picture, the immense pressure of delivering results not just for SpaceX and Tesla, but for the millions of people who had placed their faith in him. He wasn't just working to meet expectations. He was working to change the world. When he arrived, George and the engineering team were already gathered around the malfunctioning prototype. Elon didn't waste any time. He walked up to the table and immediately began asking questions. What had caused the failure? What could be done to fix it? How much time was left? George took a deep breath. "We've run through all the simulations, but there's a new variable we hadn't anticipated. The temperature fluctuations at higher altitudes are more extreme than we initially projected. We're going to need to reinforce the heat shield, but it's going to take at least a couple of weeks to re-engineer." Elon didn't like the answer, but he knew he had to keep his emotions in check. Time was of the essence, and he wasn't about to let this setback derail the entire mission. "We can't afford 2 weeks," Elon said firmly. "We need to figure out how to fix this in the next 48 hours. I don't care how, but we're going to do it. Push the team hard. This isn't just about meeting a deadline. This is about proving that we can solve the impossible. We don't have the luxury of failure." His words were harsh, but the team knew he was right. They rallied together, diving back into the problem with renewed urgency. As the hours passed, Elon sat in the corner of the room, occasionally stepping in to offer suggestions or ask probing questions. But his mind kept returning to one thought. How much longer could they keep pushing this hard? How much longer could he keep the pressure on his team, on himself? The next 48 hours were grueling. Engineers worked around the clock, testing new heat shield materials, running simulations, and making modifications. Elon didn't leave the facility. He didn't sleep. His entire focus was on the problem at hand, pushing through the fatigue and frustration. The world had just gotten a glimpse of his vision, but if he didn't solve this issue, that vision could come crashing down. On the second day, after countless trials and errors, George and the team came to him with the solution. A new composite material that could withstand the extreme conditions at higher altitudes. It wasn't perfect, but it was close enough to proceed with the next phase of testing. "We've got it," George said, his voice exhausted but relieved. "It's not ideal, but it's going to work. We can move forward with the launch schedule." Elon allowed himself a moment of quiet satisfaction. The prototype wasn't perfect, but it was enough. They had done the impossible, again. As he stood in the control room, watching the tests unfold before him, Elon realized something. The world wasn't just watching him to see if he could change the future. They were watching him to see if he could overcome the impossible, time and time again. And that wasn't just a challenge, it was his calling. In the coming weeks, the media shifted their focus once more. The technical difficulties and tight deadlines were no longer the story. Instead, the narrative became one of resilience. Elon Musk, the man who had seemingly done the impossible again, was now more than a visionary. He was a symbol of what it meant to fight for something greater than yourself. And while the trial still loomed in the background, its power was starting to fade. It no longer defined Elon. Instead, it was his commitment to the future, his ability to overcome the odds that had captured the world's attention. The days following the successful resolution of the Mars mission prototype issue were a blur for Elon Musk. The media had begun to treat his every move like a spectacle, eager to see what he would do next. But amid the buzz and attention, Elon knew he had little time to waste. The clock was ticking not just on the Mars mission, but on his entire vision. The stakes were higher than ever. He had not only made promises to the world, but he had also made promises to himself. Failure was not an option. Elon sat in his office at Tesla, reviewing the latest numbers from the Gigafactory. Tesla's quarterly reports were showing positive growth, but Elon didn't allow himself to relax. Not for a moment. The pressures of the media circus, the ongoing legal battle, and the weight of his ambitious plans hung over him like a shadow. Still, there was a spark of something in him, something beyond the sheer force of will that had driven him to this point. It was a realization that had slowly been dawning on him. This wasn't just about technology or business. This was about leaving a legacy. It was about humanity's future. That realization hit hardest during a quiet conversation one evening with Gwynne Shotwell. They had just finished a long day of strategizing about the next steps for both Tesla and SpaceX. Elon was drained, but Gwynne's words stirred something deep inside him. "You've always been the one to challenge the impossible, Elon," she said, her voice calm but firm. "You've created breakthroughs, changed industries, and redefined what's possible. But now, it feels like you're carrying something much bigger. It's not just about cars or rockets anymore. It's about the future of the entire planet. I think we need to demonstrate the technology live, in a controlled environment. Show them that this is real. This isn't just something we're claiming. It's something we're doing, right now. I want the media to see it for themselves." Jonathan raised an eyebrow. "Are you sure? A live demonstration could go either way. If anything goes wrong, it could cause even more damage." Elon considered this. "We're past the point of playing it safe. We have to prove that we're not just talking about the future, we're creating it. We can't let fear dictate our actions. If something goes wrong, we'll fix it, but we can't let this moment pass." Gwynne agreed. "It's bold, but it might just be the bold move we need." The announcement for the live demonstration was scheduled for a week later. Tesla's engineers worked tirelessly, fine-tuning the autonomous driving system to ensure that the demonstration would go off without a hitch. Elon kept in close contact with the team, checking in on progress and offering his input. Every detail was important. The pressure was mounting. If anything went wrong, the entire company's reputation could be on the line. The day of the demonstration arrived. The media had been given an exclusive invitation to witness Tesla's new autonomous driving system in action. The venue was a controlled environment, a stretch of road built to mimic real-world driving conditions, complete with obstacles and other vehicles. The goal was simple: demonstrate that Tesla's system could handle every scenario safely and efficiently. As the reporters gathered, Elon stood at the front, his hands folded behind his back, looking every bit the visionary. There were whispers in the crowd, skeptical murmurs about whether this would be another high-profile failure or a breakthrough moment. The first car, equipped with the new autonomous driving system, moved slowly onto the road. The crowd watched as it navigated tight corners, avoided pedestrians, and made quick decisions based on real-time data. The car's precision was flawless, moving with a smoothness and confidence that surprised even the most hardened critics. Each scenario was executed without issue. The car was able to adapt to every obstacle with ease. Elon paused, considering her words. "It's bigger than I ever imagined," he admitted. This whole thing. Sometimes it feels like it's more than I can handle. The weight of it all. But then I think about the people who are depending on us. About the generations that will come after us. I don't want to fail them." Gwynne smiled softly, understanding the weight of what he was saying. "We all feel that pressure. But you're not in this alone, Elon. The team, the companies, the world, they're all behind you. You've got the vision, and now we have to help you carry it forward." Her words were a comfort, but they also deepened his sense of responsibility. He wasn't just building companies. He was trying to build a future, a sustainable, multiplanetary future. And that future was hanging by a thread. The next major hurdle came a few weeks later, as Tesla prepared to unveil its latest innovation, a new, fully autonomous driving system. Elon had always believed that autonomous driving was a key piece of the puzzle for the future of transportation. With Tesla leading the charge, he believed it would be the company to revolutionize the entire automotive industry. But in the midst of all the progress, a new challenge emerged. Reports of incidents involving Tesla's previous autopilot systems began surfacing in the media again. While none of the incidents had been directly caused by any failures in Tesla's technology, the media made it seem as though the company's self-driving systems were unsafe. Elon knew the timing of the announcement couldn't be worse. There were already whispers about his credibility, with the trial ongoing and questions still lingering about the viability of his ambitious goals. Another round of negative press about Tesla's autopilot systems could spell disaster. He called an emergency meeting with Gwyn and Jonathan to discuss the situation. "We can't afford another round of negative press right now," Elon said, his voice firm. "If we launch the autonomous driving system without addressing these concerns, it will backfire. The media will make it seem like we're ignoring the real issues." Gwyn nodded. "We need to go on the offensive before the media gets too far ahead of us. We need to show the public that Tesla is serious about safety, that we're making progress with the new technology, but doing it responsibly." Elon sat back in his chair, 1,000 thoughts racing through his mind. He had always prided himself on pushing the boundaries of what was possible, but now he was faced with a new challenge: how to communicate Tesla's progress while addressing public concerns about safety. By the end of the demonstration, the crowd's skepticism had turned into stunned silence. What they had just witnessed wasn't just a demonstration of technology, it was a glimpse of the future. Elon had done it again. That night, as the headlines flooded in, Elon allowed himself a moment of quiet satisfaction. The media had no choice but to praise the technology. The tide had shifted once again. The focus was no longer on the trial or the USSS badge incident. Instead, the world was talking about Tesla's leap into the future. Elon had done more than simply weather the storm. He had transformed it into an opportunity. And in that moment, he knew that despite everything, he was on the right path. The future he had always dreamed of was no longer a distant hope. It was tangible, just within reach. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? As the media buzzed about the success of the autonomous driving demonstration, the pressure on Elon Musk intensified once more. For all the progress he had made, there was still the looming presence of the ongoing trial. The stakes were high, and while the world was focused on the future of Tesla and SpaceX, the courtroom drama threatened to derail everything. If Elon lost the case, it could not only affect his company's stock prices, but also his credibility and future endeavors. Elon had already faced countless challenges, but this trial was different. It wasn't just a matter of technology or innovation anymore. It was personal. His reputation, his freedom, and the future of his businesses were on the line. The day of the trial's final arguments arrived with a sense of heavy inevitability. Elon walked into the courthouse with his usual air of confidence, but underneath it, the tension was palpable. He wasn't just going to fight for his own future. He was fighting for the futures of the millions of people who had come to believe in his vision. The pressure felt suffocating. The courtroom was packed, the air thick with anticipation. On one side of the room, the prosecution had their arsenal of accusations ready. They were intent on portraying Elon as reckless, irresponsible, and indifferent to the consequences of his actions. They would attempt to paint him as a danger, a man whose ego and ambitions had led him to make decisions without regard for the public good. On the other side, Elon's defense team stood firm, armed with years of progress and evidence to show that he had done nothing wrong. His lawyers were confident, but even they could sense the stakes. This wasn't just another case. This was about shaping the narrative for Elon's entire future. As the prosecution presented its final arguments, Elon couldn't help but feel the weight of the words hanging in the air. They painted him as a man obsessed with his own success, a man who had pushed the boundaries of innovation without considering the consequences. They didn't just attack his actions, they attacked his character. They portrayed him as a reckless billionaire willing to sacrifice anything, even human lives, for the sake of progress. Elon Musk, the prosecutor said, his voice cold and accusing, is a man who has proven, time and time again, that he believes the rules don't apply to him. He disregards safety, ignores regulations, and does whatever he pleases without concern for the impact on society. His vision of the future is one of unchecked ambition, and we must ask ourselves, is that the kind of leader we want? The word struck hard, but Elon didn't flinch. He had been through worse in the public eye. He knew how to handle criticism, but this was different. This was a direct assault on everything he had worked for, everything he had sacrificed. When it was his turn to speak, Elon stood tall. He wasn't the man who made grandiose promises for the sake of show. He wasn't the eccentric billionaire the media had often painted him to be. He was a man who had spent the better part of his life working towards something far greater than himself. A future where humanity would thrive on multiple planets, where sustainability would be the foundation of all progress. He addressed the court with the calm assurance that only someone who truly believed in their cause could muster. His words were measured, but they carried weight. "I've spent my life creating things that matter," Elon said, his voice steady but filled with a quiet intensity. "Not for the glory, not for the fame, but because I believe that humanity can do better. We can go to Mars. We can end climate change. We can change the way we live, the way we think, and the way we interact with this planet and beyond. I've made mistakes, yes, but every single decision I've made has been about building a better future, even if that means pushing the limits." He paused, letting his words settle in the air. The risk isn't in the technology. The risk is in standing still, in not moving forward. We're living in a world that needs bold action, not timid leadership. The truth is, we don't have the luxury of waiting. Every day we waste is a day closer to losing the future we could have. Elon's voice softened, but his message was clear. "I stand by my decisions, because I believe they will make the world a better place. And I believe that's a risk worth taking." There was a moment of silence in the courtroom. It wasn't the dramatic, Hollywood-type silence, where everything was suspended in time. It was the kind of silence that gave you room to think. The jury exchanged looks, some with expressions of doubt, others with deep contemplation. They had been listening to the legal arguments all week, but Elon's words resonated with them in a way that no argument could. But then, just as the silence began to settle, the judge spoke. "I've heard enough," Judge Harris said, his voice cutting through the tension. "This case is complicated. It's filled with moral questions, legal implications, and conflicting perspectives. But in the end, I'll make my decision based on one thing: the facts." Elon's heart raced as the judge adjourned the court. The waiting began. For the next few days, Elon tried to maintain his focus. He returned to his work, but his mind was often elsewhere. The trial consumed him. He spent hours analyzing every possible outcome, every possible decision the judge might make. The uncertainty was almost unbearable. Meanwhile, Tesla and SpaceX continued to thrive. Investors had responded well to the news of the successful demonstration of Tesla's autonomous driving system, and SpaceX's Mars mission was moving forward. But despite these victories, Elon couldn't shake the feeling that everything could come crashing down in an instant. The trial wasn't over, and until it was, the future remained uncertain. On the third day after the trial had concluded, Elon was in a meeting with the SpaceX team when his lawyer called. The voice on the other end was low, but Elon could hear the tension. "Elon, the judge has reached a verdict. It's time." Elon's mind raced as he headed to the courthouse. He knew that the next few moments would change everything. The trial had dominated his life for months. This was the moment that would define his future, and he had no idea what the outcome would be. Would it be a victory? Or would the weight of the accusations finally be too much? In the courtroom, the judge sat, looking as impartial as ever. His gavel struck the wood, and the room fell silent. The next day, in a meeting with his executive team, Elon addressed the future with the same clarity that had served him so well in the past. "We've got momentum now. The trial is behind us, but we can't afford to rest on our laurels. The work we're doing is too important. We have to move forward, and we have to do it faster, smarter, and more efficiently than ever before. He turned to Gwynne Shotwell, SpaceX's president and COO. Gwynne, I want to fast-track the Mars mission prototype development. We've shown the world we can overcome the biggest hurdles, but now we need to make that mission a reality. People are watching. We need to give them something they can believe in. Gwynne nodded. Understood, Elon. We're already pushing for more efficiency in our R&D, but I agree. We need to keep the momentum going. If we can accelerate the timeline, we'll be able to launch sooner and show the world that this is more than just talk. Elon looked around the room. This is about legacy. It's about giving humanity a chance at a future beyond Earth. But more than that, it's about showing people that we can solve big problems. The world needs hope right now, and we can provide that. We just need to act. Despite the optimism in the meeting, Elon's mind kept returning to another concern: the impending congressional hearings on electric vehicle subsidies. Tesla's growth had been nothing short of miraculous, but that growth had attracted its own set of challenges. The government subsidies for electric vehicles had been a key factor in Tesla's success, but now there was pressure from both political parties to re-examine these incentives. Elon knew that if Tesla didn't secure those subsidies, it could face serious financial setbacks. To navigate this challenge, Elon's team had begun quietly lobbying behind the scenes, meeting with lawmakers to make the case for electric vehicle incentives. But the political landscape was unpredictable, and the outcome was uncertain. Elon needed to be prepared for a fight, especially as the hearings drew closer. As part of his strategy, he decided to personally address the issue. He would take a bold step, showing up to the hearings and speaking directly to the senators. It would be an opportunity to demonstrate the importance of Tesla's mission, not just to the car industry, but to the future of the planet. The fight wasn't just about subsidies. It was about convincing lawmakers that electric vehicles were the future and that Tesla was leading the way. After careful consideration, Judge Harris began. The jury and I have reached a decision. Elon Musk, on the charges brought against you, the court has determined that you acted with intent to innovate, not to deceive. While your methods may have been unconventional at times, your ultimate goal has always been for the greater good. Therefore, the court finds you not guilty of the charges. A wave of relief washed over Elon. For the first time in months, he felt a weight lift from his shoulders. He had won. The future was still his to shape. The trial had been a storm, but now, the skies were clearing. Elon stood in the courtroom, momentarily stunned by the judge's verdict. The weight of the past few months, the endless hours of legal strategy, the media storms, and the personal toll of the trial, all seemed to vanish in that one sentence. Not guilty. It was as though a veil had been lifted from his mind, and the future that had been clouded by uncertainty and doubt suddenly cleared before him. As he walked out of the courthouse, his lawyer, James, clapped him on the back. You did it, Elon. You made it through. Elon gave a tight smile, feeling a mix of relief and exhaustion. I don't know if I'd call it making it through, but I'm glad it's over. James chuckled. Over? The hard part's just begun. You've got the whole world watching you now. The real challenge is what comes next. Elon's words had been calm, but inside, he was still reeling. The media coverage had been relentless throughout the trial, and now that it was over, there was a brief moment of quiet before the storm would inevitably pick back up. As he drove away from the courthouse in a black Tesla Model S, his phone began to ring nonstop. News outlets were calling, eager for his statement. Investors wanted to know how the verdict would impact the stock market. And then, of course, there were the personal calls, friends, family, colleagues, all wanting to check in and share in the relief of the outcome. Despite the flood of communication, Elon's mind kept returning to one thought. What now? The trial had been a battle, but the war was far from over. SpaceX's Mars mission still loomed large on the horizon, and Tesla's fight for dominance in the electric vehicle market was ongoing. But now, there was a new layer of complexity. The media, public opinion, and political forces. They were all watching, waiting for him to slip up, to make a misstep. That evening, as Elon sat alone in his office at SpaceX headquarters, he reflected on everything that had led him to this point. The trial, the media frenzy, the relentless pressure. It all felt like an obstacle, but it had also sharpened his focus. He had made it through, and now he had a responsibility. The stakes were higher than ever, and his sense of purpose had never been more urgent. The day of the congressional hearings arrived, and Elon made his way to Washington, D.C., feeling the weight of the moment. As he entered the Senate building, he could hear the hum of activity around him. His team was already seated, preparing for the discussions that would take place. The hearings were set to be broadcast live, so millions would be watching as Elon Musk faced the scrutiny of lawmakers. Elon was no stranger to confrontation. Over the years, he had become accustomed to criticism, from the media, from shareholders, and even from other industry leaders. But this felt different. The room was full of powerful figures, and they weren't just interested in his companies. They were interested in the bigger picture. They wanted to know what Tesla's success meant for the future of the economy, the environment, and the country's position in the global market. The hearing began, and Elon was called to the podium. Senators from both sides of the aisle fired off questions, some respectful, some pointed. They asked about Tesla's financials, its impact on the U.S. economy, and whether the company's success was sustainable without government subsidies. Elon took a deep breath and began to speak. "Senators, thank you for having me here today. Tesla wasn't built on subsidies. It was built on a vision of a world where electric vehicles are the norm, not the exception. A vision of a world where renewable energy isn't just a luxury but a necessity. We're not asking for handouts. We're asking for the chance to build something that benefits everyone." He paused, making eye contact with the committee. "If we want to secure the future of our planet, we need to invest in the technologies that will get us there. Tesla isn't just making electric cars. We're building the infrastructure for sustainable energy. We're creating jobs. And we're doing it without relying on fossil fuels." He leaned in, his voice steady but filled with conviction. "We're not asking for subsidies to survive. We're asking for them to accelerate progress. We need to make electric vehicles accessible to everyone, not just the wealthy. We need to lead the world in clean energy solutions. And that can only happen if we continue to innovate, to build, and to take risks. Tesla is leading the way, but we can't do it alone." Elon's words struck a chord. The room fell into silence as the senators absorbed his message. They could see the sincerity in his eyes, the passion that had driven him to take on impossible tasks for the sake of a greater good. It was clear that Elon Musk wasn't just another CEO. He was a visionary, someone who believed in something larger than himself. After the hearing, the media coverage was overwhelming. Headlines praised Elon for his eloquent defense of Tesla and his vision for the future. The tone of the debate had shifted. It was no longer about whether Tesla deserved subsidies. It was about the larger question: what kind of future did we want to create? The political tension surrounding Tesla's future had barely settled when another challenge, equally daunting, emerged from an unexpected source. Elon Musk's world, which had for so long been one of innovation and optimism, suddenly found itself on the brink of a major crisis that threatened to unravel everything he had worked for. This crisis wasn't about laws, politics, or public opinion. It was about something far more personal, something that no amount of strategy could protect him from: the threat to his own companies from internal sabotage. It started with a series of strange and seemingly unconnected events. First, a few key Tesla engineers began to notice discrepancies in the data from the latest software update to the self-driving system. Nothing major at first, just small errors that seemed unexplainable. But then the issues began to escalate. Systems were malfunctioning in a way that no one could explain. The glitches were subtle but dangerous, causing the self-driving cars to behave erratically at critical moments. Tesla had always prided itself on its rigorous testing protocols, but these malfunctions were too sudden to be attributed to a regular software flaw. Elon was informed about the growing concerns, and at first, he assumed it was a simple bug. But as he dug deeper, it became clear that this wasn't just an ordinary issue. There was something more sinister at play. One evening, as Elon sat in his office at Tesla's headquarters in Palo Alto, he received a call from Gwen Shotwell. Her voice was tight, urgent. "Elon, we've got a situation. We've been investigating the glitches, and we found something troubling." Elon sat up straight in his chair. "What is it?" It's sabotage, Gwen replied, her words cold and matter-of-fact. Someone inside Tesla has been tampering with the software. They've been introducing errors on purpose, targeting the self-driving cars. We've found traces of external access, and it's clear that someone on the inside is responsible. Elon's heart sank. Sabotage? The very thought of it felt like a betrayal. Tesla was supposed to be a family, a community of passionate engineers and visionaries working toward a common goal. The idea that someone, one of their own, would try to sabotage the company's work was unfathomable. He gripped the edge of his desk, trying to process what Gwen was saying. Who? Do we know who's behind this? We don't have a name yet, Gwen responded, but we're narrowing it down. We're tracing the access logs, and we have some leads. The person is highly skilled, and they're covering their tracks. Elon's mind raced. This was a nightmare scenario. The safety of Tesla's cars was already under intense scrutiny, and now, with this deliberate sabotage, they would have to fight not just against external forces, but against someone within their own ranks. The next few days were a blur of investigation, meetings, and late-night work. Tesla's security team worked tirelessly to trace the source of the sabotage, while Elon's leadership team scrambled to contain the damage. The public announcement about the glitches was postponed indefinitely, and every update to the software was paused for a complete audit. Elon felt the weight of the situation bearing down on him. Tesla was in the spotlight, and if word got out that someone inside the company was actively trying to sabotage the self-driving cars, it could ruin everything. The legal ramifications alone would be catastrophic. Worse, it would shake the public's confidence in Tesla, potentially reversing all the progress they had made in changing the narrative about electric vehicles and autonomous driving. The company was fighting two battles now, one against an invisible enemy within their own walls and another against the potential fallout from the media. One night, after hours of reviewing surveillance footage and access logs, the team made a breakthrough. A name appeared on the logs: Ethan Barnes. He was a senior software engineer who had been with Tesla for several years and had access to the company's core systems. Elon was stunned. Ethan had always been seen as a brilliant, reliable engineer, one of the company's stars. How could he be involved in something like this? Gwen had her own doubts. Are we sure about this? Ethan's reputation is spotless. He's been with us for years. I don't know, but the data doesn't lie, Elon said, his voice strained. We need to confront him. This needs to end now. The confrontation with Ethan was anything but simple. Elon, Gwen, and a few trusted members of the security team met Ethan in a secure room at Tesla's headquarters. The tension was thick as Elon faced the engineer across the table. Ethan appeared calm, almost too calm, but there was something in his eyes, a flicker of unease that Elon couldn't ignore. Elon, Gwen, what's going on? Ethan asked, his voice steady. I haven't done anything wrong. Elon looked directly at him, his gaze unwavering. We've found the tampered code, Ethan. You've been accessing systems you shouldn't be, and we have the logs to prove it. Why are you sabotaging the company? Ethan's eyes widened for a moment, but then his expression hardened. He didn't deny it. Instead, he took a deep breath, his fingers tightening around the edge of the table. You don't get it, Elon. It's not sabotage. It's a wake-up call. You're pushing this company too far. You're pushing all of us too hard. We're making compromises. The tech isn't ready. The cars aren't safe. And you're too focused on the big picture to see the real risks. People are going to get hurt. Elon's heart skipped a beat. This is how you solve that? By putting lives at risk? By destroying everything we've built? I'm trying to stop you before you drive this company into the ground, Ethan shot back. You're playing with fire, Elon. And when it burns, it'll be on your hands. The meeting ended in silence. Elon couldn't shake the weight of Ethan's words. It wasn't just sabotage. It was a cry for help, a warning. But it wasn't a warning that justified what Ethan had done. There were lines that couldn't be crossed. Even in the face of overwhelming pressure, there was no excuse for compromising the safety of Tesla's customers. In the following days, Ethan was placed on administrative leave pending an investigation, and his access to the company's systems was revoked. Elon was forced to make a difficult decision. Ethan's actions had threatened the very fabric of Tesla's integrity, but there was also a part of him that sympathized with the engineer's frustrations. The company had grown exponentially, and the pressure to maintain perfection was taking its toll on everyone. But no matter how much sympathy he felt, the safety of the cars and the trust of Tesla's customers had to come first. Ethan's actions had put everything at risk, and Elon knew he couldn't afford to let that happen again. The internal sabotage at Tesla has been a serious breach of trust, but we are working around the clock to fix the issues. Our customers' safety and trust are our top priority. No one is above the mission. It was concise, but it didn't quell the rising tide of anger and confusion that spread across social media. Within hours, Tesla's stock took a dive, and thousands of people took to Twitter, demanding answers. Investors were particularly nervous, wondering whether this scandal would tank the company's profitability in the short term, despite its long-term prospects. Elon knew that the first thing they had to do was get ahead of the story. He had always been vocal about his company's achievements, but this was different. This was a matter of trust, and he had to rebuild that trust quickly. The next day, Elon called for a press conference. He stood in front of a sea of cameras, reporters, and microphones, his eyes scanning the crowd. This was the moment to set the record straight. He took a deep breath before addressing the audience. I won't sugarcoat this. What happened inside Tesla, what one individual did, was unacceptable. And we're doing everything in our power to ensure that nothing like this ever happens again. He paused for a moment, looking directly into the cameras. We're a company that has always prided itself on innovation, on doing the impossible. But none of that matters if we don't have the trust of the people who rely on us every day. Tesla was built with a vision of a sustainable future, a future where our cars are safe, clean, and revolutionary. That vision hasn't changed, but trust has to be earned every day. We're committed to fixing this, and I promise you, we will. The press conference didn't erase the doubts, but it was a step toward restoring confidence. Elon had taken responsibility without trying to shift blame. And though the issue of sabotage was still under investigation, he had made it clear that Tesla wasn't going to hide from the problem. In fact, Elon promised more transparency from Tesla, with regular updates to the public as they worked to fix the issues. Tesla's public relations team worked tirelessly in the following weeks to issue statements, hold interviews, and calm the growing fears among customers and investors. But the damage wasn't just going to disappear overnight. It was going to take time and action to restore Tesla's image. As the weeks passed, Tesla's internal investigation into the sabotage continued, but Elon's focus had shifted. The crisis had forced him to confront the reality of the immense pressure that came with leading a company of Tesla's scale. The demands were unrelenting, and the stakes were higher than ever. But Elon couldn't let this setback stop him. Tesla had already weathered so many storms, and now, more than ever, he was determined to prove that they could overcome anything. He refocused his efforts on the Mars mission and on driving Tesla's next phase of innovation. The sabotage might have shaken him, but it also renewed his commitment to moving forward. There would always be obstacles. There would always be those who tried to tear him down. But Elon knew that if he kept pushing, kept believing in his vision, the future would still be his to shape. Elon Musk had faced many trials throughout his career, but the sabotage within Tesla, especially when it threatened the safety of the company's self-driving vehicles, was one of the most public and damaging challenges he had ever encountered. The engineers had worked tirelessly to uncover the full extent of the tampering, but it was the media that truly escalated the crisis. What had once been a small internal issue was now front-page news. The story broke with a vengeance. News outlets from across the world picked up the narrative, with headlines like, Tesla sabotaged from within, and Elon Musk under fire. Did Tesla's CEO ignore internal dangers? Public reaction was swift and unforgiving. The very idea that one of Tesla's own engineers had actively tried to destabilize the company's technology was a devastating blow to the brand's image. But the biggest problem for Elon wasn't just the media coverage. It was the sense of betrayal. To see the company that he had poured his heart and soul into, a company that had changed the world, become a target of doubt was hard to stomach. Tesla's reputation had always been built on a commitment to safety, cutting-edge technology, and a vision of a sustainable future. Now, all of that was under threat. One of the first public comments Elon made about the situation was a tweet, which in his world had become a powerful tool of direct communication. Despite the best efforts of his team, the media frenzy continued. Talk shows, blogs, and even late-night comedians pounced on the story, making jokes about rogue engineers and speculating on how deep the sabotage might have gone. Some began to even question whether Elon Musk himself had known about the issues and simply ignored them. Elon had always prided himself on being open and accessible, but this was different. He had never faced this kind of backlash before, and it stung more than he cared to admit. The internal sabotage was bad enough, but the constant scrutiny and the venomous rumors that seemed to swirl around every decision he made were overwhelming. It wasn't just his personal reputation on the line. It was the future of Tesla and, by extension, the entire electric vehicle industry. If Tesla didn't manage to weather this storm, the entire movement for sustainable energy could lose its most visible champion. But Elon Musk was no stranger to adversity. After all, his entire career had been one long battle against the odds. From the early days of PayPal to the founding of SpaceX and Tesla, he had faced skepticism, ridicule, and even near bankruptcy. Yet, each time, he had emerged stronger. This crisis would be no different. He knew that it wasn't enough to simply talk about rebuilding trust. Tesla needed to act. And quickly. Behind the scenes, Elon and Gwynne began formulating a response that would go beyond just words. Elon called a series of emergency meetings with his top engineers and product teams at Tesla. He wanted to make sure that they were taking every possible precaution to ensure the integrity of their software, systems, and cars. "We need to go through every line of code," Elon told the team, his voice steady but intense. "We're going to audit the software from top to bottom. We can't afford to take shortcuts here, not when lives are on the line." Gwynne, ever the pragmatist, added, "We'll also need to roll out a series of updates in the coming weeks. We'll give full transparency on what we're doing to fix this, and we'll make sure our customers understand that their safety is our top priority." Elon nodded. "Get it done. We'll release the update as soon as possible, and we'll make sure we communicate every step of the process." Tesla's engineers worked around the clock, reviewing every detail of their self-driving software, patching security vulnerabilities, and running tests to ensure the system was rock solid. Elon personally oversaw the progress, visiting the team and checking in regularly. There would be no cutting corners this time. He would make sure that Tesla came out of this crisis stronger than ever. As the weeks passed, Tesla began to release regular updates about their progress. Each announcement was carefully crafted to show their commitment to transparency and to restoring their customers' trust. The company offered free software updates for all owners, emphasizing the importance of the security improvements. Elon even appeared in a series of interviews, reaffirming his commitment to safety and his belief that Tesla's mission was more important than ever. In the months that followed, the company's stock slowly began to recover. While there was still some skepticism, Tesla's swift and transparent response had helped to stem the tide of public outcry. Elon's efforts to personally take responsibility and his determination to fix the issue head-on had resonated with many. His focus on action, not just words, was what ultimately began to restore faith in the company. The sabotage incident was a harsh reminder of the dangers of operating at the frontier of innovation, but it also reinforced one of Elon's core beliefs. Challenges, no matter how daunting, could always be turned into opportunities for growth. The public's perception of Tesla had been damaged, but Elon knew that with time and effort, they would come out of it stronger, more resilient, and more committed to their mission than ever before. As the months passed and the worst of the public outcry began to subside, Elon Musk realized something he hadn't fully processed in the heat of the crisis. Tesla had reached a critical turning point. The events surrounding the sabotage, the public backlash, and the subsequent push for transparency had not only tested the company's resilience, but it had also given it a rare opportunity to refine its values and its mission. With the crisis largely behind them, Tesla was now facing a different kind of challenge, rebuilding the momentum that had once driven the company forward and reigniting the spark of innovation. Elon was keenly aware that while the immediate damage had been mitigated, the long-term success of Tesla depended on its ability to continue evolving in a fiercely competitive industry. And there was something bigger at play now, something more pressing than just recovering from the sabotage. One chilly morning, Elon stood in the Tesla design lab, staring at a prototype of the new electric vehicle that would eventually become Tesla's flagship model. This was the car that would define the next phase of Tesla's evolution. The Cybertruck had captured global attention with its bold design, but it was the Model X and Model S that had already proven Tesla's potential in the electric vehicle space. Now, Elon and his team were working on something that could push Tesla even further, something that would redefine the future of transportation and align with his vision of a sustainable world. Is it ready for the first prototype test? Elon asked his lead engineer, who was reviewing data on the vehicle's performance. The engineer nodded, adjusting his glasses. It's ready. The new battery technology and the revamped self-driving capabilities have shown promise in the simulations. We're looking at a range that's 20% higher than the current models. The acceleration is incredible too. We're talking 0 to 60 in under 2 seconds. Elon smiled, but the weight of the past months was still on his shoulders. Great, but we have to make sure it's perfect. No glitches this time. The engineer looked up, sensing the weight of Elon's words. Understood. We're taking extra precautions. Safety will be our #1 priority. As Elon watched the prototype being prepared for testing, he couldn't help but think back to everything Tesla had been through. The sabotage, the press conferences, the scrutiny. They had come so far, yet he knew the road ahead was still full of challenges. But Tesla had survived the storm. Now, it was time to look ahead. A few weeks later, Elon stood at the head of a conference room, preparing for a critical meeting with his executive team. Tesla's financials were looking better than ever, despite the earlier setbacks, and their new Model Y was showing strong sales numbers. But Elon knew that just focusing on the present wasn't enough. They had to think bigger. They had to think beyond cars. We've already revolutionized the electric car industry, Elon began, his voice steady. But we're not done yet. We have the technology, the talent, and the platform to change the entire transportation ecosystem. Think about it. Autonomous vehicles, electric semis, and even electric planes. We've got the pieces. Now we need to start integrating them into a fully connected, sustainable future. The room went silent as everyone absorbed the enormity of what Elon was suggesting. Some executives looked at each other, unsure of what to make of it. But Elon wasn't backing down. We can be the leaders in transportation, he continued, not just in electric vehicles, but in an entire new era of mobility. Imagine a world where people no longer have to worry about fossil fuel emissions, where we reduce traffic congestion by utilizing autonomous fleets of electric cars. It's within our reach. All we have to do is go for it. It was an ambitious vision, but Elon Musk had always been known for dreaming big. And if anyone could make it happen, it was Tesla. Elon's workdays were longer than ever, filled with meetings, decision-making, and relentless drive to maintain the edge in both industries. But as exhausting as it was, there was a sense of purpose behind every moment. His vision of the future was always clear. A world with clean energy, sustainable transportation, and the ability to reach beyond Earth's atmosphere to explore the stars. Despite the challenges, there was something deeper at work now. The sense of urgency that had once been driven by the fear of failure had transformed into a relentless pursuit of progress. Elon was no longer just trying to prove a point to the world. He was pushing the boundaries of what was possible, shaping a future that could potentially change the course of humanity itself. But to achieve this, there was still so much more to do. There were still obstacles to overcome. The self-driving car was far from perfect, and Tesla still faced resistance in many corners of the world. There were always critics, always those who questioned whether the dream was worth the price. Yet, in that very uncertainty lay Tesla's greatest opportunity. It was a challenge Elon had come to embrace with every fiber of his being. The path ahead would not be easy, but for him, the risk was always worth the reward. And so, Elon Musk prepared for the next phase of his journey. The journey that would define the future of not just one company, but an entire world. The months following the sabotage scandal had allowed Tesla to recover and even grow in many ways. The stock price had begun to climb back, consumer trust was slowly being rebuilt, and the company had released a new batch of software updates that improved the safety of their vehicles. But with success came new pressures that were less obvious, more insidious, and had the potential to derail everything that Elon Musk had worked for. Tesla was no longer just a car company. It was the face of electric mobility, a brand that stood for sustainable energy, autonomous vehicles, and a new way of living in a world that increasingly depended on technology. But it wasn't just the public that had expectations. The industry was also closing in. Competition was no longer limited to traditional automakers. It came from every corner of the tech world. The lines between industries were blurring, and that was something Elon had to navigate carefully. On a crisp fall afternoon, Elon walked through the Tesla headquarters in Palo Alto, his mind racing through a series of meetings and strategic decisions. There was a lot on his plate: SpaceX launches, the upcoming production ramp-up for the new Model Y, and the ongoing push for fully autonomous vehicles. But none of those things had the weight that the company's financial performance carried. A large portion of Tesla's success rested on its stock price, and despite the recovery, the market still remained volatile. A slight dip in stock value, a production delay, or a security breach in their software could trigger another round of media frenzy. Elon had learned over the years that control in business, especially in the tech world, was more about managing perception than actual outcomes. One bad quarter could lead to negative headlines, and negative headlines could lead to a downward spiral. Gwynne Shotwell, SpaceX's president, had warned him about this during a conversation months ago. Elon, you're juggling more than just two companies now. People are watching everything you do, waiting for any sign of weakness. Your competitors? They're just waiting for you to slip up. Elon wasn't naive. He knew Gwynne was right, but part of him couldn't help but feel the pressure of those expectations. The spotlight had always been on him, but now it felt like it was intensifying. Every move Tesla made, every product launch, every innovation was under a microscope. One of the biggest challenges Tesla now faced was the growing competition in the autonomous driving space. Rivian, Lucid Motors, and even traditional automakers like Ford and GM were ramping up their efforts to roll out electric vehicles, and some of them were starting to incorporate self-driving technology into their designs. But it wasn't just the automakers. They had tech companies like Google's Waymo and Apple also moving in on the self-driving market. The tech giants had endless resources to invest in the future of mobility, and that put even more pressure on Tesla. Elon had spent years perfecting Tesla's autopilot software, but he knew that in this fast-evolving landscape, they could not afford to fall behind. Rivian and Lucid Motors had made impressive strides, and Google's self-driving division was advancing with remarkable speed. If Tesla was going to maintain its position as the leader in the autonomous vehicle market, they needed to act quickly. They needed a breakthrough. Later that afternoon, Elon took a break from the flurry of meetings and walked outside to the Tesla parking lot. He looked around at the cars lined up, the very same vehicles that had been so central to his personal and professional journey. For a moment, he let himself feel a sense of pride. Tesla had come a long way since its humble beginnings, and even after everything they'd been through, it was still the shining example of what was possible when technology met visionary thinking. But the world was changing fast. The self-driving technology that Tesla had pioneered was no longer just an exciting possibility. It was becoming a necessity. And with that necessity came the responsibility to lead the industry into an era where technology wasn't just about luxury or convenience. It was about sustainability, safety, and improving the lives of billions. The next big test for Elon and Tesla came sooner than expected. A prominent competitor in the electric vehicle market, Rivian, had just unveiled their own self-driving truck prototype. The announcement was met with a flurry of media coverage and excitement. It was clear that Rivian was positioning itself as the next big player in electric transportation, and that meant Tesla would have to move faster and smarter to stay ahead. Elon's reaction wasn't one of panic. It was one of resolve. "We need to up our game," he said at the next team meeting. "The competition is fierce, but that only pushes us to be better. We have the advantage of experience, and we're going to use it." Tesla began ramping up their efforts in every area: new software updates for the self-driving fleet, more aggressive production timelines for their next-generation vehicles, and a renewed focus on perfecting their battery technology. They knew they couldn't afford to rest on their laurels. If anything, they had to push even harder. Behind the scenes, Elon also began to focus on SpaceX, which had achieved major milestones with the successful launches of the Starship prototypes. The dual focus on both Tesla and SpaceX was a tightrope walk for Elon, But he knew that these two companies, though very different in their missions, were both fundamental to his grand vision of a sustainable, spacefaring future. The two companies complemented each other in surprising ways, and he believed that their successes were intrinsically linked. One evening, after a full day of meetings, Elon found himself standing on the balcony of his office, looking out over the city. The stars in the sky were clearer than usual, and for a moment, he felt the weight of everything pressing down on him. There were so many unknowns. Tesla had come so far, but the road ahead was filled with uncertainty. If they didn't manage to scale self-driving technology in the way they envisioned, if they didn't integrate it into every car they produced, there was a chance they could be overtaken by a competitor. His mind turned to SpaceX, the other company that had been driving his ambitions. As much as he was invested in the success of Tesla, he couldn't ignore the fact that SpaceX was on the verge of changing everything. The mission to Mars, the Starship program, the commercialization of space. These projects had the potential to alter humanity's future in ways that even Tesla's success could not match. But the challenges on Earth, specifically in the automotive world, were still incredibly daunting. Elon was the face of Tesla, the driver behind its innovations, and as much as he wanted to focus on space, he couldn't afford to ignore the battles on the ground. It was at that moment, as Elon gazed out into the distance, that an idea struck him. Tesla had been focused primarily on passenger vehicles and energy storage. But what if they could make autonomous technology more accessible to the world beyond just cars? What if Tesla could provide self-driving technology for other types of vehicles, like trucks, buses, and delivery vehicles? This wasn't just about consumer cars. This was about the infrastructure of mobility itself. What if Tesla could become the company that powered transportation systems, not just within the car industry, but in logistics, public transit, and beyond? That night, Elon called a meeting with his senior leadership team. He wasn't sure if they were ready for the scope of the vision he was about to share, but he knew it was time to take a bold step forward. Everyone's focused on the electric car right now, Elon began, his voice steady. But we can do more. Much more. We're not just going to create a future of self-driving cars. We're going to create a future where Tesla is the backbone of transportation itself. We need to expand our scope to include trucks, buses, delivery vehicles, anything that moves. This is bigger than just vehicles for personal use. It's about redefining the entire transportation ecosystem. The room went quiet. Elon could see the team processing the magnitude of the proposal. He continued, if we can integrate our autonomous technology into these systems, we'll not only lead the self-driving revolution, we'll be the backbone of an entire industry. In the weeks that followed, Tesla's leadership team began drafting a roadmap for this new vision. They started by identifying key industries that could benefit from Tesla's self-driving technology: logistics, agriculture, public transportation, and commercial trucking. Tesla's existing capabilities in battery technology, combined with their innovations in autonomous driving, could disrupt industries that were ripe for transformation. Tesla's existing trucks, like the Tesla Semi, had already shown the potential for electric-powered commercial vehicles. But Elon's vision extended far beyond that. They would develop fleets of autonomous vehicles that could revolutionize industries ranging from last-mile delivery to freight transportation. In the process, Tesla would create a massive network of autonomous vehicles that could talk to each other and to the infrastructure, optimizing efficiency and reducing traffic congestion. The path was uncertain, but Elon had always thrived in uncertainty. The stakes were high, but the opportunity was even higher. As Elon continued to refine this vision with his team, he knew there would be challenges ahead. Competition would be fierce, the logistics of scaling such an ambitious plan would be immense, and the regulatory environment would likely be a barrier at every turn. But the road ahead had never been clearer. Tesla wasn't just going to revolutionize cars. It was going to revolutionize how the entire world moved. Elon smiled to himself. It was this kind of challenge, this kind of ambition, that had driven him all along. The world had tried to hold him back before, but it had only made him push harder. And now, with a new vision in mind, he was ready to take on the future. As Tesla's new vision for autonomous vehicles began to take shape, Elon Musk found himself at the helm of yet another monumental shift. This new direction would not only shape the future of transportation, but would also redefine what Tesla could achieve on a global scale. The idea was simple yet audacious: Tesla would create a fully integrated, autonomous transportation ecosystem that spanned beyond personal cars to include electric trucks, buses, and even last-mile delivery systems. It was about creating the future of mobility, one where the entire infrastructure was powered by Tesla. Elon's team was both energized and overwhelmed by the scope of this new plan. Developing a fleet of fully autonomous electric vehicles capable of performing all types of transportation tasks was no small feat, but Elon had always been a man of big ideas. This wasn't just about getting from point A to point B. It was about transforming how people lived, how goods moved, and how cities functioned. It was about building a future where emissions were drastically reduced and energy efficiency was maximized. In a series of strategic meetings over the next few weeks, Tesla's leadership team worked tirelessly to figure out how to make this vision a reality. The first major challenge was addressing the technological infrastructure required to support an autonomous transportation network. Tesla had already made incredible progress with its autopilot software, but the leap from consumer cars to a fully integrated, city-wide network of self-driving vehicles was no small task. Elon was unwavering in his belief that Tesla could make it happen. He knew the company's engineers and designers were some of the most brilliant minds in the industry, and he trusted them to find solutions to the countless hurdles ahead. Tesla would need to integrate new AI technologies, create a seamless communication system between vehicles, and build a network that would operate in harmony with existing urban infrastructure. But it wasn't just the technology that Elon had to worry about. There was also the matter of regulatory approval. In many parts of the world, autonomous vehicles were still a distant dream, and government bodies were reluctant to embrace fully self-driving vehicles. The legislation hadn't caught up with the pace of innovation. But Elon was no stranger to pushing boundaries, especially in the face of bureaucracy. One evening, Elon sat with his chief legal advisor, Rebecca, as they discussed the regulatory landscape. It was clear that Tesla would face significant challenges in getting governments to approve their vision. "We're going to need to engage with regulators directly and fast," Rebecca said, her tone serious. "The technology is ready, but the laws are not. We'll have to work with governments to make sure they understand the benefits of this. We can't afford another delay, especially with all the competition in the market." Elon leaned back in his chair, rubbing his temples. "I know. It's frustrating. The technology is already here, but the political and legal system moves at a glacial pace. It's like we're waiting for them to catch up to us." Rebecca nodded. "It's always been this way with new technology. But we can push the envelope, work with progressive regulators who are willing to take a chance. Just look at what we did with electric cars. We've already shown them that we're capable of driving change. We just need to make sure the message is clear." Elon looked out the window, the vast expanse of the California sky stretching before him. He had always believed that the future was waiting to be built. And now, with the stakes higher than ever, the future of Tesla, and possibly of the world, depended on pushing through the red tape and creating a new paradigm for transportation. In the months that followed, Tesla's engineering teams worked at an accelerated pace to develop the next iteration of their self-driving technology. The plan was to design a vehicle fleet that could autonomously perform a wide range of tasks, from long-haul trucking to city-wide bus systems to urban deliveries. This new fleet would rely on cutting-edge AI that would not only control the vehicles but also communicate with other vehicles and infrastructure in real time to optimize traffic flow, safety, and energy use. Tesla's new electric semis, which were still in the testing phase, would be at the heart of the company's plan to revolutionize freight transportation. The self-driving, fully electric semi-trucks would drastically reduce costs, emissions, and traffic congestion while increasing safety on highways. Elon believed these vehicles could be the first step in transforming global logistics and moving closer to a world where transportation no longer depended on fossil fuels. Meanwhile, the company also worked on refining its fully autonomous city buses and last-mile delivery trucks. Tesla's existing expertise in battery technology and electric motors was invaluable in making these vehicles efficient and cost-effective, but it was the development of the AI that would make these vehicles truly autonomous. Tesla's AI team worked around the clock to improve the systems that would allow these vehicles to operate seamlessly in dense urban environments, interacting with traffic, pedestrians, and obstacles in real time. Despite the technical breakthroughs Tesla was making, the pressure was beginning to mount. The public and investors were growing impatient. Tesla had delivered on its promise to make electric vehicles a viable alternative to traditional cars, but the next phase, the one that would truly cement the company's role in the future of transportation, was taking longer than expected. Elon had always been a man of urgency, but he also understood the importance of precision. He knew that rushing this process could lead to disastrous results, particularly when it came to safety. Tesla's reputation was on the line, and if they launched these autonomous systems too soon, it could have catastrophic consequences. The first public trial of the autonomous semi-trucks was scheduled for next year. Elon had already made it clear that there could be no compromises when it came to safety, but he couldn't help feeling the weight of the challenge on his shoulders. This was more than just another product launch. It was the future of Tesla, and it could change the entire logistics industry for decades to come. One evening, as Elon sat at his desk, reviewing the progress on the autonomous fleet project, a knock on the door interrupted his concentration. "Come in," he called. Gwynne Shotwell, SpaceX's president, walked into the room with a calm but determined look on her face. "Elon, I've been hearing rumblings from the board about the next phase of Tesla's expansion," she began. "They're eager to see results. I know you've been pushing hard on the autonomous vehicle front, but there's been concern about the timeline. Are we on track?" Elon leaned back in his chair, his fingers steepled as he pondered the question. "We're making great progress, but it's going to take time. It's not just about building cars anymore. It's about creating an entirely new system of transportation. And that means we have to get it right." Gwynne studied him for a moment. "I know, but the pressure's mounting, and the clock's ticking. Investors want to see us succeed. The world is watching. We can't afford to fall behind now." Elon looked up at Gwynne, his resolve hardening. "We won't. The world has always underestimated us, but we've always proved them wrong. Tesla is going to change everything. We're not just about electric cars. We're going to change how the world moves. And that's going to take time, but it will be worth it." As Elon returned to his work, he felt the weight of the task ahead of him more acutely than ever. The path forward was daunting, but he knew that pushing the boundaries of what was possible was the only way forward. Tesla was on the cusp of something far bigger than they had ever imagined. But Elon knew that the work was far from over. The pressure to scale these trucks for commercial use was immense. Tesla was still facing regulatory hurdles, and although the technology was advancing rapidly, public acceptance of autonomous vehicles was still a long way off. In addition to that, the company faced fierce competition from legacy automakers and tech companies, all of whom were working to develop their own autonomous transportation solutions. That evening, after the test had concluded, Elon gathered his senior leadership team in a conference room to review the trial. The mood in the room was cautiously optimistic, but there was no time for complacency. Tesla had made a significant leap forward, but now came the hard part, turning this technology into a commercial reality. "We've proved that the technology works. We've shown that Tesla can handle autonomous freight. But we have a long road ahead," Elon began. "We need to refine the vehicles, ensure they can handle every condition, and make sure we can meet the regulatory requirements to scale. And that's going to take time." The room fell silent as the team absorbed his words. The test had been successful, but it was clear that there was still much to be done. The truck fleet would need to undergo months of further testing, data collection, and software optimization before they could even think about mass production. Meanwhile, the AI systems that powered the trucks would need continuous improvement to handle real-world traffic and diverse driving conditions. Gwynne leaned forward, her voice serious. "And don't forget about the public. The trust factor is critical. People need to believe in this, and right now, the majority of people still don't trust self-driving vehicles. We have to prove that these trucks are safer than human drivers. That's the key to winning them over." Elon nodded. "You're right. We'll need to build partnerships with regulators, work with governments to set new standards for autonomous vehicles, and prove that this technology can save lives." In the following months, Tesla ramped up its efforts to refine the semi-trucks and expand the scope of their autonomous technology. Elon spent long hours meeting with regulators, advocating for new laws that would allow for the widespread deployment of self-driving vehicles. He also turned his attention to expanding the Tesla network, developing a system that would connect all Tesla autonomous vehicles, cars, trucks, buses, into a cohesive, real-time transportation grid. This ambitious plan would create a network where vehicles could communicate with one another, share traffic data, and optimize routes for efficiency and safety. The pressure was immense, but it was also what fueled Elon Musk. He had been here before, facing the odds, taking risks, defying expectations. And this time, as always, he was prepared to push through to the other side. The journey had only just begun. The days that followed were filled with a series of milestones and setbacks. Elon Musk, driven by the vision of a world redefined by autonomous electric vehicles, watched as Tesla's future began to take form. But like every monumental project, this one came with its own set of challenges. The first major test for Tesla's new vision came when the company launched its prototype for the fully autonomous electric semi-trucks. The trucks, capable of driving themselves across long stretches of highway without human intervention, were meant to showcase Tesla's ability to redefine freight transportation. The timing couldn't have been more critical. This first public trial was intended to demonstrate Tesla's leadership in the autonomous vehicle industry, and Elon knew it had to be flawless. In a massive testing ground just outside of Silicon Valley, Tesla had set up a network of roads that mimicked real-world conditions. The semi-trucks would be tested for their ability to handle everything from highway driving to complex urban environments. Elon arrived at the site early that morning, his mind racing with thoughts of what was to come. This was more than just a trial run. If Tesla could pull this off, it would be the beginning of a transportation revolution. Elon stood at the edge of the test track, watching as one of the semi-trucks maneuvered effortlessly around a series of obstacles. The truck's massive electric engine hummed quietly, its sensors scanning the environment, its AI making split-second decisions. There was a quiet confidence in the way the truck moved. This was the future. This was what Elon had envisioned for years. A world where transportation was cleaner, more efficient, and autonomous. Gwynne Shotwell, who had flown in from SpaceX to watch the trial, stood next to him. "This is impressive," she said, nodding toward the semi-truck that was now approaching a sharp turn with precision. "But I know you. You're already thinking about what comes next." Elon smiled, his eyes focused on the truck's performance. "We can't stop here. This is just the beginning. The future is much bigger than trucks. It's about integrating all of it, cars, buses, delivery systems, into one seamless network. This is how we change the world." The semi-trucks performed beyond expectations during the trial, and Tesla was able to demonstrate how autonomous freight could not only reduce operational costs, but also significantly lower emissions. The trucks glided down highways, merging into traffic and making deliveries to mock loading docks without human intervention. The team had worked tirelessly to get to this point, and for a brief moment, there was a collective feeling of triumph. Despite the progress, the company continued to face challenges from competitors. Rivian, Lucid Motors, and other startups were gaining traction in the electric vehicle space, and many of them were investing heavily in autonomous technology as well. Even traditional automakers like Ford and General Motors were making strides in autonomous driving. Elon knew that Tesla couldn't afford to rest on its laurels. They had to keep pushing, innovating, and outpacing the competition. One evening, while Elon was at his desk reviewing the latest data from the semi-truck tests, he received an unexpected call from Mark Zuckerberg. The CEO of Meta, formerly Facebook, had been watching Tesla's developments with great interest, and he wanted to discuss a potential partnership. "Hey, Elon," Mark began, his voice upbeat. "I've been following Tesla's progress on autonomous vehicles, and I think we're on the cusp of something huge. I'm wondering if there's an opportunity for us to collaborate, maybe on data infrastructure or AI development. We have a lot of capabilities in AI and connectivity that could complement what you're doing." Elon leaned back in his chair, considering the offer. He had always been cautious about partnerships with major tech companies, but Meta's reach and resources were undeniable. It could accelerate Tesla's plans, especially when it came to the AI and data infrastructure needed to support an autonomous vehicle network. "I'm open to hearing more," Elon said, his curiosity piqued. "Let's set up a meeting." In the weeks that followed, Elon and Mark met several times to discuss the potential for collaboration. Tesla's autonomous driving systems could benefit greatly from Meta's expertise in AI, connectivity, and data processing. In return, Meta would gain access to Tesla's cutting-edge electric vehicle platform and autonomous driving technology. The partnership was a delicate balance. Elon knew that aligning with Meta could accelerate Tesla's goals, but he was also cautious about giving up too much control. Tesla had always prided itself on being an independent innovator, and Elon wasn't sure if a collaboration with a tech giant would compromise that. He paused, letting the weight of the statement settle in. The Tesla transport network is the future. It's the next evolution of how people and goods will be transported. We're not just building autonomous vehicles anymore. We're building a system that is sustainable, safe, efficient, and adaptable. A system that can handle everything from urban traffic to long-haul freight and last-mile delivery. And today, I'm going to show you how this system works in real time. The presentation began with a live demo of the Tesla transport network in action. Elon and the team had worked hard to simulate real-world conditions, busy city streets, congested highways, and urban delivery routes. As the demo unfolded, it became clear that this wasn't just about vehicles driving themselves. The real magic was in the synchronization between the Tesla vehicles and the infrastructure they interacted with. Elon's voice cut through the demonstration, explaining how each vehicle within the network communicated with one another to avoid accidents, reduce traffic congestion, and optimize routes. Every Tesla vehicle in the network is connected to every other vehicle, as well as to the infrastructure, traffic lights, roads, charging stations, all working together to create the most efficient transportation experience possible. The audience watched in awe as Tesla's fleet of cars, trucks, and buses navigated complex intersections, adjusted their speed to prevent accidents, and even seamlessly passed deliveries off to other vehicles in the network. It was a living, breathing transportation ecosystem that reacted and adapted in real time to changing conditions. It was an interconnected system that, for the first time, had the potential to change the way cities functioned. As the presentation concluded, the room erupted in applause. Investors, analysts, and even competitors were left in shock at what Tesla had achieved. The vision Musk had painted for years was now coming to life. But Elon wasn't finished yet. The unveiling of the Tesla transport network was only one part of a much larger plan. He had to address the roadblocks that still stood in the way. Now, we know that the technology is ready, Elon said, the room quieting down. But the road ahead is filled with regulatory challenges. Governments are still catching up to the speed of innovation, and we're going to face significant resistance from some quarters. But we've never shied away from a challenge. We will work with governments, we will push for new legislation, and we will prove that this technology is not only safe, but is the future of transportation. After much deliberation, Elon made a decision. Let's move forward with this, but on our terms, he told his team. We'll work with Meta, but Tesla will remain at the forefront of this technology. We'll integrate their capabilities, but we'll retain control of our vision. As the partnership with Meta began to take shape, Tesla's autonomous vehicle network continued to evolve. The company was closer than ever to realizing its dream of a fully autonomous, integrated transportation system. But with every step forward, the pressure mounted. Investors, regulators, and competitors were all watching closely. The world was waiting for Tesla to deliver on its promises, and Elon knew that now, more than ever, the road to the future would require every ounce of effort, innovation, and determination that Tesla had to offer. With Tesla's ambitious push towards autonomous vehicles and an integrated transportation ecosystem gathering momentum, the world was starting to take notice. Investors, industry experts, and tech enthusiasts alike eagerly followed each step of Elon Musk's progress. As successful as the trials with the autonomous semi-trucks had been, Elon knew that the true turning point was still to come. After weeks of intense work and several breakthrough moments, the next phase of Tesla's autonomous vehicle strategy was about to be unveiled to the public. This time, it wasn't just about trucks or cars. It was about the entire system Tesla had built to allow all its autonomous vehicles to seamlessly communicate and coordinate with each other. Elon had always envisioned a transportation ecosystem where electric vehicles didn't just drive themselves, but worked in harmony with one another, creating a fully integrated, real-time solution for the world's traffic problems. The Tesla headquarters was bustling with activity as engineers and designers worked around the clock to prepare for the big reveal. The team had spent months refining the software, AI, and vehicle hardware to create what they now call the Tesla Transport Network, TTN. The network was a fully autonomous, real-time system that connected not just Tesla vehicles, but also public infrastructure, delivery systems, and even energy management grids to create an entirely new way of moving goods and people. Elon stood before the team in the boardroom, ready to present the next big leap for Tesla. His voice was calm, but carried the weight of what was at stake. Today, we aren't just talking about creating a self-driving car or a self-driving truck. We are talking about an integrated transportation solution that's going to change how the world moves, forever. One afternoon, Elon received an unexpected call from Jeff Bezos, founder of Amazon, who had been watching Tesla's developments with great interest. "Elon," Jeff began, "I've been thinking about the logistics potential of what you're building with your autonomous fleet. We're always looking for ways to optimize delivery, reduce costs, and improve efficiency. What if we work together on last-mile delivery solutions?" Elon was taken aback, but his mind began racing. A partnership with Amazon could unlock incredible potential for Tesla's autonomous delivery system, particularly in urban areas. "Let's talk," Elon said, his mind already working through the logistics. The partnership with Amazon had the potential to be a game-changer for Tesla. Elon Musk knew that if Tesla could integrate its autonomous vehicle network into Amazon's vast logistics empire, it would be a giant leap forward in the evolution of the Tesla Transport Network, TTN. With Amazon's global reach and its expertise in last-mile delivery, this collaboration could streamline Tesla's autonomous freight and delivery services, potentially transforming industries far beyond what anyone had imagined. The initial meeting with Jeff Bezos had been electric. Both CEOs had a shared understanding of the importance of innovation and efficiency, and the synergy between Tesla's autonomous vehicle technology and Amazon's delivery systems was immediately apparent. They discussed everything from optimizing delivery routes to reducing the carbon footprint of global shipping and how Tesla's AI-driven fleet could revolutionize logistics. Elon knew this collaboration could accelerate the deployment of autonomous Tesla vehicles on a global scale. But, just as important, it also brought a new set of challenges. While Amazon was a logistical titan, Tesla's technology was still in its early stages, and many parts of the network had yet to be refined for large-scale commercial use. Integrating Amazon's demands for reliability, speed, and cost efficiency into Tesla's autonomous vehicle network would take time, testing, and patience from both sides. "We'll have to be prepared for delays," Elon explained to his team as they finalized the deal with Amazon. "This collaboration will push us beyond anything we've done before. We'll need to ensure that the vehicles can scale to handle Amazon's vast delivery system, and we'll need to maintain our commitment to safety, efficiency, and sustainability." The next step in the partnership was to conduct extensive trials. Tesla's autonomous trucks and delivery vehicles would need to be tested in Amazon's high-demand logistics environments. Elon's team of engineers worked tirelessly to prepare Tesla's autonomous fleet to meet Amazon's rigorous standards. The testing was a high-pressure endeavor. Every failure, every delay, was a setback, but every success built confidence in the partnership. It was during one of these early tests that the first real challenge emerged. While the autonomous trucks successfully navigated the delivery routes and met most of Amazon's operational needs, one particular issue began to arise: how to ensure that these vehicles could handle the unpredictable nature of traffic in large urban areas. Amazon's delivery network spanned multiple continents, but urban areas remained one of the toughest hurdles for self-driving vehicles. Elon was standing in the Tesla control room when the call came in. A fully autonomous Tesla delivery vehicle, operating in New York City, had encountered a complicated traffic situation. The vehicle was stuck at a busy intersection, unable to navigate its way around a traffic jam caused by an accident up ahead. The vehicle's AI was trying to reroute, but the complexity of the urban environment was proving to be too much for the system at that moment. "This isn't good," Elon muttered under his breath as he observed the live feed of the vehicle's situation. The AI had come to a complete stop, waiting for human intervention. His engineering team was quick to jump in, manually overriding the system to free the truck from its jam. Elon watched as the truck finally navigated around the problem, but the incident left him uneasy. Despite the tremendous progress Tesla had made with its autonomous driving technology, moments like these reminded him of the unpredictable variables in real-world environments. The AI wasn't infallible, not yet. Days later, Elon sat down with his senior team to debrief. The New York City incident had sparked a heated debate among his engineers. Some argued that the autonomous vehicles weren't yet ready for dense urban environments, while others believed it was just a matter of fine-tuning the system's ability to predict and adapt to more complex traffic patterns. "We can't afford another situation like this," Elon said firmly, his eyes narrowing as he considered the challenges ahead. "This is where the real test of our technology lies. If we can't make it work in a city like New York, how can we expect to scale it globally?" Gwynne Shotwell, Tesla's COO, leaned forward, clearly worried. "The urban environment is a beast of its own. It's not just about the vehicles anymore. It's about how we connect them to the infrastructure, how we leverage real-time data, and how we account for every possible variable in the system." Elon nodded, fully aware of the complexity of the issue. This is why the Tesla transport network needs to be more than just autonomous vehicles. It needs to integrate with smart city technologies, urban infrastructure, and local traffic systems. We're talking about rethinking how entire cities are designed, not just how vehicles drive. His words echoed in the room as everyone in the audience realized the magnitude of what was about to unfold. Tesla had successfully built the most advanced autonomous vehicle network in the world. But now, the battle was no longer just about developing the technology, it was about getting the world to accept it. After the presentation, Elon sat down with his leadership team to discuss the next steps. The launch had been a resounding success, but the hard work was just beginning. They now had to push forward with the regulatory hurdles that would determine whether the Tesla transport network could actually be implemented on a global scale. The issue of legislation was one that Elon had always known would be the biggest obstacle. While Tesla had made great strides in creating safe, reliable autonomous vehicles, the road to widespread adoption was still fraught with obstacles. Government regulators were slow to adapt to the new reality of autonomous transportation, and some countries were actively resistant to allowing self-driving cars on their roads. "We need to make sure that governments understand the potential here," Elon said to his team. "We need to show them how the Tesla transport network will not only improve safety, but also reduce traffic congestion and lower emissions. We can't just ask for permission. We need to demonstrate the benefits. We'll have to go above and beyond to prove that this is the future." The team immediately set to work on crafting their strategy for convincing regulators around the world to embrace the Tesla transport network. It would take years of lobbying, meetings with government officials, and proof of the technology's safety before Tesla could begin scaling the system globally. But Elon was used to fighting for what he believed in. While the regulatory process unfolded, Tesla continued to improve the network's capabilities. The integration of more vehicles into the system meant that Tesla would need to scale the infrastructure for charging stations, data centers, and even specialized AI to manage the increased flow of information. Meanwhile, on the global stage, Tesla's competitors were becoming increasingly vocal about the company's ambitions. Traditional automakers, from Ford to General Motors, were now seriously investing in autonomous technology of their own. Tech giants like Apple and Google, who had long been rumored to be working on their own autonomous vehicles, were also ramping up efforts to enter the space. It was no longer a matter of if autonomous vehicles would take over. It was a matter of who would control the market. Elon knew that Tesla had a significant lead, but the competition was fierce. The next few years would be pivotal in determining whether Tesla could stay ahead of the curve. Their vehicles were now more advanced than anything else on the market, but the real challenge would be in maintaining that lead while scaling the Tesla transport network globally. The challenge in New York forced Elon and his team to rethink their approach. The solution wasn't just in refining the vehicles themselves. It was in creating a comprehensive ecosystem that could support the vehicles as they navigated urban environments. Tesla needed to collaborate with local governments and urban planners to introduce smart city technologies that would allow Tesla's fleet to communicate seamlessly with traffic signals, road sensors, and other urban infrastructure. Elon knew this wouldn't be easy. Many cities around the world were still resistant to the idea of self-driving vehicles. Government officials were hesitant to allow autonomous trucks and cars to navigate their streets without extensive regulations. He understood that Tesla couldn't build this network alone. To tackle this, Elon began a series of meetings with city leaders and government officials. The goal was to showcase how Tesla's autonomous vehicles when integrated with smart city infrastructure, could not only improve traffic efficiency but also reduce accidents, lower pollution, and create safer, more sustainable urban environments. Elon's charm and persuasive skills were on full display as he spoke to city councils and local regulators. He didn't just sell them on the technology, he sold them on the future. He painted a picture of cities that could be transformed by the Tesla transport network. Roads free of traffic jams, vehicles that knew where they were needed most, and a future in which transportation was faster, cleaner, and more efficient. Meanwhile, the media had caught wind of Tesla's growing collaboration with Amazon, and the press was ablaze with speculation. Headlines ranged from optimistic to skeptical. Tesla's partnership with Amazon, a game changer or a pipe dream? One outlet questioned. Others wondered if the merger of Tesla's autonomous vehicles and Amazon's delivery network would face logistical challenges that even Musk couldn't overcome. For the first time in a while, Elon felt the weight of public scrutiny. Tesla was no longer just a scrappy underdog trying to change the world. It had become a company that everyone was watching, both with excitement and skepticism. He knew that this was the moment when everything could either fall into place or fall apart. But Elon was never one to shy away from a challenge. If anything, the scrutiny only fueled his determination to prove everyone wrong. "We'll make it work," he said confidently to his team, pushing away any doubts. "We always have." As the weeks passed, the Tesla transport network slowly started to show its potential. The team refined the AI's ability to handle urban traffic, integrating real-time data from cities around the world to make smarter routing decisions. The partnership with Amazon began to take shape, with Tesla's autonomous vehicles making successful deliveries in select markets. Despite the challenges, there was a clear sense of momentum building. Tesla was poised to become the leader in autonomous transport, not just with cars and trucks, but with an entire interconnected system that could change the way the world moved. The tipping point had come. Tesla's vision of a fully autonomous, integrated transportation network was no longer a distant dream. It was an impending reality. Tesla had always been a company that thrived on pushing boundaries, whether it was with electric vehicles, autonomous driving, or space travel. But as they inched closer to completing the integration of the Tesla Transport Network, TTN, the challenges were mounting faster than anyone anticipated. The partnership with Amazon had shown incredible potential, but it was also stirring up new controversies. And then, there was the matter of the government regulations. Tesla had underestimated just how much resistance it would face from local and federal authorities. Elon Musk was well aware of the obstacles. It had never been easy, and he was no stranger to battle. Whether it was Tesla's early struggles in the auto industry or SpaceX's near-bankruptcy days, adversity had always seemed to follow him like a shadow. But now, with the entire future of autonomous transportation on the line, the stakes were higher than ever before. It all started to unravel during a critical meeting with the U.S. Department of Transportation, DOT. Elon and his team were preparing to present the Tesla transport network to a room full of government officials, city planners, and transportation experts. Their goal was to convince these leaders that Tesla's network would revolutionize transportation, reduce traffic, and make cities safer. However, as soon as Elon began his presentation, the mood shifted. The representatives from the DOT weren't nearly as receptive as he had hoped. They were skeptical about the impact of autonomous vehicles on public safety and questioned whether Tesla's technology was truly ready to operate without human intervention. "Mr. Musk, we've seen what happens when systems fail. We've all seen the footage of Tesla accidents. And while you've made progress, there's a concern that your vehicles aren't ready to be fully integrated into our urban infrastructure," said one of the DOT officials, his arms crossed in front of him. Elon felt his patience wearing thin. "We've had over 1 million miles of autonomous driving experience. Our technology is safer than human drivers. And we're not just talking about cars. The Tesla transport network will improve infrastructure, reduce traffic, and create jobs. We're ready to show you how our system works in real time." But the response from the officials was far from encouraging. "The risks are too great," another official interjected. "We cannot just put our cities at the mercy of AI-driven vehicles. What happens when the system fails? What happens when there's a cyber attack? What about the jobs lost from truck drivers and delivery workers?" Elon's team tried to counter every argument, but it quickly became clear that the meeting was going nowhere. The government officials seemed more interested in highlighting potential risks than acknowledging the benefits. As the session drew to a close, Elon stood up, his mind working overtime. "Thank you for your time," he said, his voice calm but firm. "We'll continue working with you to address these concerns. But mark my words, whether you approve it or not, the world is changing, and Tesla will lead the way." Back at Tesla's headquarters, the mood was grim. Elon walked through the hallways of the sprawling building, his mind racing with thoughts of the meeting. It wasn't just the resistance from the DOT that troubled him. It was the larger picture. If the government wouldn't budge, how would Tesla expand its network? How could Tesla convince cities to adopt autonomous vehicles when there were so many hurdles standing in the way? Gwynne Shotwell, Tesla's COO, met him in the hallway as he walked. "How did it go?" she asked, already knowing the answer from his expression. "It's a mess," Elon replied, rubbing his temples. "They're not convinced, and they're throwing every roadblock they can. They keep asking about the what-ifs. What if the system crashes? What if there's a fatal accident? What if a hacker targets the network? Did they acknowledge any of the improvements we've made?" Gwynne asked, trying to remain optimistic. "No," Elon said, his voice tightening. "It's like they don't care. The truth is, we've built something that could transform cities, but the government just isn't ready for it. It's the same old story, fear of change." The next few weeks were filled with a flurry of meetings, lobbying efforts, and media appearances. Elon and the Tesla team made appearances in Washington, D.C., meeting with senators and governors, trying to sway public opinion and shift the narrative. The media, too, was divided. While some outlets praised Tesla's ambitious vision, others took a more cautious stance, focusing on the risks involved. As the debate over autonomous vehicles raged on, Elon turned to his team for ideas. They couldn't just rely on traditional lobbying. Tesla needed a groundbreaking demonstration to prove that the Tesla transport network was more than just a concept. It had to be a tangible, undeniable success. "We need a high-profile test," Elon said one evening, pacing in the Tesla boardroom. "Something big. Something that will show the world that this works. We need to prove that the TTN isn't just theoretical, it's ready for the real world." The team quickly got to work. After some brainstorming, they decided to hold a massive public demonstration in San Francisco, a city that had been both a testing ground and a battleground for autonomous vehicles. Tesla would orchestrate a live demonstration where the TTN's vehicles would transport goods, people, and even emergency responders across the city, seamlessly navigating through urban traffic, managing real-time adjustments, and showcasing Tesla's network in action. Elon knew this would be a risky move. The stakes were higher than ever, and one misstep could cost Tesla dearly. But he had a vision. He believed in the technology, and he believed in the team that had built it. This was the moment they'd been waiting for, a moment that could tip the scales in their favor. The day of the demonstration arrived, and the excitement was palpable. Tesla's fleet of autonomous vehicles, ranging from cars to trucks to buses, lined up at the starting point. The route was carefully mapped out to cover the busiest parts of San Francisco, including the iconic Golden Gate Bridge, busy shopping districts, and winding residential streets. Elon watched from a command center as the vehicles began their journey. The vehicles had been equipped with the latest AI and real-time data systems, allowing them to adapt to traffic, obstacles, and even weather conditions. Tesla's network was more than just a set of self-driving cars. It was a living, breathing ecosystem of vehicles that worked in unison, communicating with each other and the city's infrastructure to create an unparalleled transportation experience. The demonstration went off without a hitch. Vehicles seamlessly navigated the urban landscape, avoiding traffic, responding to changes in the environment, and delivering goods and passengers on time. There were no glitches, no hiccups, just smooth, efficient, and safe transportation. As the final vehicle crossed the finish line, a wave of relief washed over Elon. They had done it. As the world watched, Elon Musk stood on a podium in front of the media, flanked by city officials and Tesla engineers. The press was buzzing with excitement, but Elon knew the real work was just beginning. "The future of transportation is here," he said, his voice steady and confident. "Today, we've shown that the Tesla transport network works. It's safe, it's efficient, and it's the way forward. We're ready to work with governments, cities, and businesses to make this vision a reality. In the days following the demonstration, the momentum shifted. The media coverage was overwhelmingly positive, and even some of the more skeptical government officials began to soften their stance. Elon's team had proven, once and for all, that Tesla's autonomous transport network was not a fantasy. It was a fully functioning, real-world solution. The storm had passed. Now, it was time for the calm to set in. The storm had passed, and the calm that followed felt surreal. Tesla's bold demonstration in San Francisco had done more than just prove the potential of their autonomous vehicle network. It had changed the conversation entirely. The media, the public, and, most importantly, government officials were beginning to view the Tesla Transport Network, TTN, not as a risky experiment but as the future of urban mobility. In the days that followed, Elon Musk and his team met with city leaders and transportation authorities from across the globe. What had once been skepticism and resistance was now tempered with curiosity and optimism. Officials from New York, Los Angeles, and even international cities like Tokyo and Berlin began reaching out, eager to learn more about how Tesla's TTN could help reshape their urban landscapes. It was a defining moment for Tesla, but Elon knew the real work had only just begun. Now that the world had seen what Tesla was capable of, the pressure to scale up the network and meet global demand was mounting. There were still many obstacles to overcome, from regulatory hurdles to logistical challenges, but Elon had built Tesla for moments like this. His relentless focus on innovation and his ability to push the limits of technology were what had gotten Tesla to this point, and it was what would carry them into the future. A few weeks after the San Francisco demonstration, Tesla's headquarters buzzed with activity. Engineers, urban planners, and logistics experts were working around the clock to fine-tune the TTN and make it ready for full-scale deployment. As Tesla expanded its network of autonomous vehicles and integrated smart city technologies, new partnerships were forming with governments, logistics companies, and tech firms. Elon found himself in constant meetings, but his mind was often elsewhere. In the quiet moments, he would look out the windows of the Tesla campus and watch the progress unfolding. The vision he had spent years building was no longer a distant dream. It was happening, and it was happening faster than anyone had expected. One afternoon, Elon sat down with Gwynne Shotwell and the head of Tesla's infrastructure team, discussing the next steps. The conversation was critical. This wasn't just about making a few tweaks to the existing system. To achieve Tesla's ambitious global vision, the TTN had to scale in a way that was sustainable, efficient, and secure. Gwynne, we need to expand our fleet. Fast, Elon said, leaning forward in his chair. The demand is there, and we can't afford to slow down. But we also need to integrate with the global supply chain. Think bigger. How do we take what we've built in San Francisco and make it available in every major city around the world? Gwynne nodded. We'll need to partner with governments to create the necessary infrastructure. Smart city technology needs to be in place, and we need to work with cities to help them adopt the systems. But we also have to scale our manufacturing. The vehicle production pipeline will need to increase substantially. We've done it before, Elon said, his voice confident but tinged with the pressure of the task ahead. We can do it again. We just need to be strategic about the rollout. Start with the cities that are most ready for the TTN, then expand from there. The team spent the rest of the afternoon mapping out the global expansion plan. It was clear that Tesla's success wouldn't just depend on the vehicles themselves. It would also depend on collaborating with local governments, municipalities, and other private sector players to create a unified network that could power the future of transportation. Weeks turned into months, and Tesla's TTN network began to expand. As the first fully autonomous vehicles rolled out in cities across the U.S., they were met with an enthusiastic response from residents and businesses alike. Local delivery companies that had previously relied on human drivers began to see the benefits of autonomous freight, and city dwellers found that their commutes were quicker, cleaner, and safer. But it wasn't just about the vehicles. Tesla worked with local governments to build new infrastructure, smart traffic systems that communicated with Tesla's fleet, optimized delivery routes that reduced congestion, and energy-efficient charging stations that made the entire system more sustainable. By the end of the year, Tesla's TTN network was operating in over 20 major cities around the world, and the system was already making waves in the logistics and transportation industries. The dream Elon had envisioned for so long was becoming a reality. But even as Tesla basked in its success, Elon knew that the true impact of the TTN was just beginning to take shape. One evening, as Elon sat at his desk going over expansion plans, he received a call from Jeff Bezos. It had been months since their last conversation, but the two men had stayed in touch, discussing the progress of their partnership. "Hey, Elon," Jeff's voice crackled through the line. "I've been watching what's been happening with the Tesla transport network, and I have to say, I'm impressed. It's moving faster than I thought it would." Elon leaned back in his chair, a smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. "I guess when you have a vision, you have to move quickly to make it happen." "You're doing more than that," Jeff replied. "You're changing the way people think about transportation. We're already seeing the benefits of Tesla's autonomous trucks in our network, and it's only going to grow from here. There's real potential here, Elon. I think we're on the cusp of something even bigger." Elon's eyes narrowed with curiosity. "What are you thinking?" "Global logistics," Jeff said, his voice calm but filled with excitement. "We've been talking about it internally, how Tesla's TTN could be the backbone of the next generation of global supply chains. Amazon's massive infrastructure could work in tandem with Tesla's autonomous fleet to create a seamless, global network for goods delivery. It's the future of commerce." Elon thought for a moment, the idea percolating in his mind. He knew that combining Amazon's logistics prowess with Tesla's autonomous vehicles could create a system unlike anything the world had ever seen. It was a natural next step, one that would allow them to scale their vision even further, delivering not just people, but goods across the globe in the most efficient, sustainable way possible. The following months were filled with meetings between Tesla and Amazon, hashing out the details of a joint global logistics initiative. The integration of Tesla's autonomous vehicles into Amazon's massive shipping network would be the culmination of years of hard work, and it would change the way goods moved around the world forever. But Elon knew that success wasn't just about business, it was about impact. The future of transportation wasn't just about moving goods and people from one place to another. It was about creating a sustainable, equitable, and efficient system that would reduce emissions, create new jobs, and make life better for everyone. As he looked out the window of his office, Elon saw the skyline of the city stretching out before him, a symbol of the future that Tesla was building. The Tesla transport network wasn't just a technological breakthrough. It was the foundation of a new era in transportation. And with every passing day, that future was coming closer to reality. As Tesla's TTN becomes a global standard, Elon's eyes turn toward the next frontier, the colonies on Mars. For Elon, the journey has just begun. But for the rest of the world, the dawn of a new era in transportation has already arrived. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough?